and a little afraid to maybe do something bold. They did just that today, and I think it's a really good trade, contingent upon a few things that we're going to go over. We'll kind of give you all the particulars. We'll talk about which draft picks are going to Memphis. We'll talk about these contracts, how the numbers work. What does this mean for the lineup changes, both in the interim and down the road, if Walker Kessler is brought back, which I believe he is going to be, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. But just a massive, massive day. Potentially, if things fall the right way for the Utah Jazz, this will be a playoff team and maybe even a top 5 or 6 team in the Western Conference as soon as next year. Maybe, okay? It doesn't change the approach right now. We'll tell you why in just a little bit. But a lot to do on this program today. My name is Spence Checketts. I host the show. Porter Larson behind the glass producing the program today. We're not only going to talk about this trade, but certainly it will drive the bulk of the content. We have some good basketball guests. We have some good football guests as well, because there's a little game coming up on Sunday called the Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara between Seattle and New England. So a lot to do. We're going to bring in Chase Hansen, former Ute, former NFL player, on the program today. We have not spoken with Chase since Kyle Whittingham changed his address to Ann Arbor and Morgan Scalley has taken over the football program. One of my favorites, Freddie Coleman, ESPN Radio. Smooth Freddie, man. It's always good to have him on. We'll have him react to the trade the Jazz made, and then we'll talk some Super Bowl with Freddie Coleman. We're going to bring in Smitty because, of course, Richard Smith spent 40 years helping out with transactions such as this. So Smitty will stop by to give us the front office take here. And then Zach Harper. Great day to have Zach on the show for your NBA Daily Assist. And, oh, by the way, the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, too. What a jam-packed Tuesday show. And a jam-packed Tuesday day, quite frankly. A bunch of other trades have also been consummated. The Pistons are able to grab Kevin Huerter in a trade with the Bulls and the Timberwolves. Mike Conley is on his way to Chicago. Dario Saric will join Kevin Huerter in Detroit. Jaden Ivey goes to the Bulls as well. 3-team trade there. Apparently, the Warriors are discussing trades involving Draymond Green. We've talked a lot about the need of the Boston Celtics for a big and thought they might look at Jusuf Nurkic. Well, they've landed on Nikola Vucevic, and they're going to send Anthony Simons on his way to Chicago. So a lot going on, drinking through a fire hose, as we like to say on the program today. Chase Hansen, Freddie Coleman, Richard Smith, Zach Harper, Bill Riley, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, hello. Happy Tuesday. How are you? And that guy, the radio producer equivalent of Jaren Jackson Jr., I would say you would get Defensive Player of the Year. You're kind of a gritty, grindy guy. What do you think of the move?
I really like to crash the glass, though.
I know you do, and he does not. Little-known Jaren Jackson Jr. fact.
That's the one thing I'll push back on a little bit. I can guard multiple positions, though, stretch the floor a little bit.
I know you can.
Get to the rim. You know it. No, listen, I like the trade. I do. I've been high on Jaren Jackson Jr. since he was a draft prospect, so we'll include my bias in that. Obviously, when you make a trade like this, only time does tell whether it's a win or not, but you pick up a really good player to pair with some good front court pieces you already have. If you're the Jazz now, you turn your attention to some ball and hand type guys that you may get in the draft. You keep developing Keontae George. On paper, I really like what this looks like. As long as those draft picks don't end up like 2 or 3 or 4 above that, which I don't think that they will, just looking at them on the surface. So a lot to get to and a bunch of fun stuff. Chase Hansen, the best voice in radio, Freddie Coleman. Whoever has the best takes, I don't know. The best voice in radio, though, that's Freddie Coleman. Of course, Smitty has a bunch on this, and then Zach Harper and Bill Riley as well. So a bunch to get to. Probably a good portion of that will be the trade that we just saw go down.
Good Tuesday show for you. I'll be on TV tonight with my guy Dave Fox reacting to this trade on 10:35 at 10:35 on KMYU. So set your alarms for that. All right, Chase Hansen, our first guest right out of the gates. But before we get to Chase, courtesy of our good friends and your good friends at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 with Prize Picks.
Big game's coming up, kids. The big game is right around the corner, and there's no better way to cash in than with our good friends at Prize Picks. Big game max discount this week. Prize Picks has a special max discount for the big game live in the app right now. Drake May just needs one passing yard for the max discount to win. Just add another player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you can cash in. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 and get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, I can tell when news has come down with how much my phone starts to go off for no reason, because I am single. I have the same friends I've had for 25 years. I don't talk to very many people. I don't get very many text messages. Porter texts me the rundown, and that's really about it. And then suddenly today, boom, my son's in town. Shout out Connor, great to see him. Suddenly all these text messages come spilling in. I'm like, either somebody's dying or the Jazz made a trade. And luckily the Jazz made a trade, because when somebody dies, it's sad. And it is potentially a franchise-changing move in the same way that adding Jeff Hornacek to this group in the 90s was, next to John Stockton and Karl Malone, of course, coached by the legend, may he rest in peace, Jerry Sloan, that led that franchise to 2 NBA Finals appearances. Am I going to sit here and tell you the Jazz are going to the Finals next year? I'm not going to do that. But what I will sit here and tell you today is that I think this is a tremendous deal by Austin Ainge with a lot of potential, depending on certain things. So if you're just hopping in your car and you missed the news, Austin Ainge, who is leading the basketball operations for the Utah Jazz, decided to engage with the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, as a result of trading Desmond Bane last year to Orlando, in addition for a bunch of draft capital, the writing was on the wall that Memphis had done their calculation and didn't believe the Jaren Jackson Jr., Ja Morant, Desmond Bane team was a team that was going to grow into what we thought it could maybe 3 years ago. A lot of that is because Ja Morant does not take his job seriously. We'll get to that in a moment. But most people believe the one player they wanted to hang on to was Jaren Jackson Jr., who has won a Defensive Player of the Year and has been to an All-Star game twice. He is 26 years old. He is still very much a young player who probably is just entering his prime. He's got 7-8 years of elite basketball left, if not more than that. So the Grizzlies received Walter Clayton Jr., and I really like Walter. I think he's going to be a good pro for a long time. Kyle Anderson back in Memphis, big-time story. It's not, but you needed that for salary filler. Taylor Hendricks, who at some point might turn into a player that we thought he could. He's still very young. Of course, with the injury a year ago, the minutes in games played indicate he's still kind of a rookie. George Niang, the minivan, drives his way to Memphis, salary filler as well. And then 3 future first-round picks. All right, so let's get to the particulars here of what these picks are going to be. And I should also say the Jazz gave up a lot. But here's the deal. You have to give up a lot if you're going to get a really good player like Jaren Jackson Jr. I've seen a lot of people react like, wait, that is way too much to give up. You have to go all in at some point. Like, what is the point? Excuse me. What's the point of stockpiling assets if you don't utilize those assets when a all-star player is on the market and is there to be had? That's why you have the treasure trove of assets. I mean, unless you're lucking into a top 3 pick, and it's never happened to us here in Utah, the percentages of one of your mid or late first round picks of turning into something special, they're very small. Does it happen? Of course. We've seen it here with Gobert and even Mitchell. Of course, John and Karl. It happens, but that's the outlier. It doesn't happen very often. So the picks they're trading away, and here's where Austin is just a sharp dude. I'll tell you what. The Jazz are going to trade away the most favorable 2027 first-round pick of Cleveland, Minnesota, and their own, okay? So, of course, that's a result of both the Gobert deals and the Mitchell deals. The one wild card here is there are reports that the Cleveland Cavaliers might trade Darius Garland to the Clippers for James Harden. And what would that indicate? Well, to me, that says they think Donovan Mitchell is leaving Cleveland next year. Where have we heard that before? James Harden's contract comes off the books. He's in the final year of a 2-year, $81 million deal he signed with the Clippers last season. There's a chance the Cleveland Cavaliers are tearing it down. There's a chance, right? So will Cleveland's pick be valuable next year? The Jazz are betting that they are not going to be in a spot that will be that problematic to give up their own pick next season. But here's the other thing. They gave up the Lakers' 2027 first-round pick for next year as well. At one point, before the Luka trade, we thought that would be a valuable asset. It very much is not. But here's the deal. The draft next season in 2027, as the Jazz have sent 2 2027 first-round picks out, is not thought to be very good. Where Austin Ainge has made his name as a talent evaluator in the NBA is through the draft. So he has done his calculation, and he is fine sending away not one but 2 picks in the draft next year because it's not thought to be near the class of the draft this season. And yes, first-round picks are valuable, but again, you got to give up something, and I applaud the boldness of this front office to do that in order to grab an all-star player and a former defensive player of the year. The last pick is in 2031, and it is unprotected. It belongs to the Phoenix Suns. Variables there for sure. An unprotected asset on the market is something you don't usually give up. But, Matt Ishbia, the new owner in Phoenix, he has proven to be a little bit of a blockhead, but he does have deep pockets, and he will pay for talent. So I don't really feel like the draft capital is that much of an ask for a player like Jaren Jackson Jr., who, like I said, has been to the All-Star game twice and ultimately has won Defensive Player of the Year. All right, so there's the draft capital perspective, and there's the portion. We've already talked about the players. I do think Walter Clayton Jr. is going to be a good guard in this league for a long time. We'll see what Taylor Hendricks turns into. Kyle Anderson and George Niang are essentially salary fillers. As far as the other players coming along, John Conchar, Jock Landale, Vince Williams Jr., for you college basketball fans, he played at VCU when they went to the tournament a couple of years ago. He's a second-round pick, and he is actually a very good perimeter defensive player. And this is what the Jazz need. I cannot speak to whether or not John Conchar, Jock Landale, or Vince Williams Jr. are part of the future for the Jazz. No idea. They're cheap options to bring off the bench, if anything else. But over the past, we're in the 4th year now of, I know they like to say a teardown. It's been a rebuild, and more often than not, it's been pretty clunky. The one consistent theme for the Utah Jazz is they're not just bad defensively, they're the worst team in the league defensively, and quite frankly, it's not even close. How much of that is, hey, we've got to hold on to our draft pick? I don't know. How much of that is intentional? No clue. Just the numbers say what they say, and adding Jaren Jackson Jr. and potentially Vince Williams Jr. as well to this group ups their defensive IQ right away. A couple of other things, all right? They did not give up their draft pick this year, okay? So they maintain this asset for the upcoming draft, which, again, as we've talked about on the show, is a top 8 protected pick that if it's out of the bottom 8, it goes to the world champs, and you cannot do that. So what does that mean? It means that Jaren Jackson Jr. is about to find out that he has a bad back. It means that Jaren Jackson Jr. is probably going to suffer a shoulder injury on his flight to Salt Lake. We are not going to see the Jazz play their frontline squad this year. They are still going to play their way. Even though Austin Aines said they would not manipulate lineups in the name of draft capital, that's exactly what they are doing currently, and that's exactly what they will keep doing. So Jaren Jackson Jr., welcome to Salt Lake. Sorry about your ankle, but you're out for the rest of the year. It's not necessarily rare in the NBA. The Jazz are going to hold on to the draft asset, which is a huge thing because this draft class is really good. Another dynamic here that I think a lot of people probably... So, Jaren Jackson Jr. is 6'9". He's won the Defensive Player of the Year before. He's been to 2 All-Star games. You know what he doesn't do? He doesn't rebound. It's always been kind of a weird thing with the career of Jaren Jackson Jr. If you go look at his numbers, he averages for his career just over 5 rebounds a game, okay? And he is not some, dynamic rim protector. He can do that. What he's known for defensively is one of maybe 10 guys in the league that can switch 1 through 5, guard on the perimeter, hedge, and get back and protect the glass. I mean, he can do that. That's what makes him elite. Not his shot blocking, not his rim protection. So what does that mean? It means he essentially, now Will talks a lot about positionless basketball. We're going to get to that in a moment. But Jaren Jackson Jr. is a less than average rebounder, okay? And he can actually stretch the floor a little bit as a quote-unquote stretch 4. He shoots about, for his career, 36% from 3 and 37% from 3 a year ago. That is a great number for a guy who you can put on the floor next to Walker, next to Lowry, and you do have some outside shooting. Because the modern-day NBA, as we know, spacing, shooting, you don't want it to be essentially plugged in like it used to be with Gobert and Favors back in the day. But Jaren Jackson Jr. is not a player that a lot of people, I just think, assume that would be a lot like Walker, so there's redundancy there. There's not. It's actually a really, really good fit. Okay, it also indicates to me that there are more moves on the horizon, because it doesn't appear to be the group next year. Walker Kessler at the 5, Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 4, Lauri Markkanen at the 3, and to me this indicates they think Ace can play 2, which is unbelievably exciting because you'll have a 6'10" 2 guard, a 6'11" small forward, a 6'10" power forward, and a 7'2" center. You know how many teams have that in this league? 0. Okay, so if you want to throw Keontae in there, am I concerned about the lack of ball-in-hand decision-makers, dynamic offensive players? For sure I am. That's where Darren Peterson fits into this puzzle. But Keontae, who is a net negative defensively, what Austin Ainge just did today is provide all the support he needs behind him, regardless of his inability to guard his own man. Now, you would prefer that. I mean, Allen Houston, back to the Knicks in the 90s, was never a great defensive player, but he learned how to be a system defensive player under Jeff Van Gundy and Pat Riley. That's what we just need Keontae to be that. He's never going to be, an on-ball Bruce Bowen, all-defensive team, guard on that side. He's never going to be that, okay? He's more of like, as we talk about, an off-the-bench combo scoring guard for a team that's actually serious about competing. But I will say I think Keontae's growth this year was a conduit to what we saw today. If Keontae George doesn't grow into a dynamic bucket getter, an individual scorer the way he has this year, the Jazz don't make this trade. I firmly believe that. Coming into the season, that was what we talked about. We need one of these guys to pop. Keontae did. Therefore, Austin Ainge, Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck, they look at their treasure trove of assets. They do the calculation that we're really not that far away from at least kicking the tires on maybe being a top 5 seed in the West, so let's go do something. Memphis, it's leaked that they're shopping Ja, and as a result of that, that allows the Jazz to engage them about a conversation concerning the more consistent, better option on the roster. Ja has more talent, but he's not a serious pro. Jaren Jackson Jr. is. This is a good trade for the Jazz. It could potentially become a great trade for the Jazz as long as certain things fall into place and these 3 first-round picks they've traded don't end up being like the number 1 overall pick in the draft. But bravo, Austin Ainge, Danny Ainge. Bravo, Justin Zanuck, Ryan Smith. Good job. You were bold today, and if you're a Jazz fan, you should feel much better about your team today than you did yesterday. All right, we'll catch a break. We'll get back to this. Freddie Coleman, Richard Smith, Zach Harper, Bill Riley, but Chase Hansen, our buddy, first guest right out of the gates on a Tuesday right here on ESPN 700. Jaren Jackson Jr. is the newest member of the Utah Jazz, one of the biggest trades in the history of the franchise today. Will we look back on this day as a banner day that was kind of a conduit to the next generation of competitive Jazz basketball? The hope, of course, is yes. We'll get back to it coming up in just a little bit, but let's welcome in Chase Hansen, former Ute, friend of the program, who apparently is across the pond. How are things, buddy?
They're fantastic, Spence. It's been a minute. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I don't know if you've heard since you've been traveling, but Kyle Whittingham lives in Ann Arbor now.
I have. I stay close to Coach Witt, but we talk from time to time. But I've heard that rumor out this way. It made it out this way.
Fair enough. And, of course, we've spoken to a number of former players and a lot of guys you played with and a lot of coaches, of course. But since we have not been able to chat with you about the news, it really, in a lot of different ways, Witt is a national name chase over the past month in a way that he wasn't in 21 years here. So your thoughts on what lies ahead for Kyle in Ann Arbor, and, of course, attendant to that, your thoughts on the new head coach of the Utah football program, our friend Morgan Scalley.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I'm probably not going to give you much that's going to be that new. I love Witt and I love Scalley. I have great relationships and had great experiences with both of them. And my short take is Witt is going to be great for Michigan, and Scalley is, in my opinion, going to be incredible for Utah. I think it's, being a Utah man, it's tough to see some of the talent that left, but other than that, I don't think there's a better guy to rebuild the program and kind of take you where we all want to go than Scalley, and I think Witt was a tremendous hire for Michigan. So kind of playing both sides here, but it's an honest take.
No, that's what I've always loved about you, and that's how I've tried to cover the story because, as you know, Chase, Kyle takes six coaches with him to Ann Arbor, 5 players with him to Ann Arbor, 4 who were on the team a year ago, and Celeste Moa, the #1 recruit in Utah this year. So there are a lot of fans around here that feel like he's betrayed them. And I've tried to use this platform, this podium, to wish for good things for Kyle, but also believe that Morgan is the right man for this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten that, and I, talk to different people who are upset with Witt, and, there's kind of a feeling of betrayal there. But, I mean, if anybody knows Witt, they know that he just wants to win. And that's his thing. He's going to do what it takes to win, and I wouldn't expect anything different of him. From that standpoint, I just, it's kind of the world of college football now. And so I think what he's doing is he's trying to win football games, and I think what Scalley's going to do in the next couple years, couple months is the exact same. And if he can get the best talent he can, I don't think he's going to miss the opportunity to do so. So I think it's just learning to play the game that kind of exists in college football now, and a guy like Witt's not going to hesitate to get the best talent he can there. So I think that's just kind of the nature of the beast at this point, and the job of doing football games. So that's kind of how it goes, and he's going to do it wherever he is, and I think Scalley has the opportunity to do the same. We just got to figure out how to, and by we I mean they, how to figure out how to do the whole college football open, transferring deal. It's unique, and I'm sure it's going to take some time, but Scalley's the guy.
The only sport in the world where there's free agency every year, Chase. Like, it's beyond wild at this point. And, the model that Morgan and his staff are following appears to be really, in many ways, the model that Witt built here. And a lot of the transfers are from smaller schools. A lot of them are familiar with Kevin McGivern, the new offensive coordinator. We had Colton Swan on the show last year, the new defensive coordinator. So a lot of this is just kind of like following suit about what's been built. But what do you think of that model? Just like really trying to grab the players from the smaller schools or lesser known schools that appear to be hungry for an opportunity, or would you prefer to see them, go after kids who are transferring from their P4 peers?
It's hard to say without a peek inside of kind of what's going on the inside. I mean, Utah's built a pretty, incredible machine over the last little while, not recruiting, I guess the biggest name athletes out there, and they've done it, through culture, through player development, through, finding the right personalities that can handle it and do it Utah way. So I guess my take is I don't necessarily think it's just about where they're recruiting from, because I think it's all about just getting the right guys in the building. What I find fascinating is how, I guess, just kind of how the money flows is what I've kind of been interested in. And, and this is me just not fully understanding exactly what's going on the inside, but, how much of that strategy is based on, being financially limited compared to the Michigan and Ohio State, and how much of that is, just pure strategy. And so that's something I don't fully know. But I think they have a great set of recruiting coaches in that building. So that's something to hang a hat on.
Did you play for Sharif? Was Sharif your position coach? I can't remember.
Scally was my position coach.
That's
and
right.
then Justin N was my position coach. And so Sharif, I was there with him, and he's a legend. He's one of my favorites of all time, but he was not my position coach, and then I left just before Swan got there. So
That's right. I wanted to ask you about Sharif because I don't know. I know you're traveling, and I know you're busy building a business, and I want to talk about that in a moment. But Morgan's introductory press conference, when he stopped and talked about Sharif, he became emotional and called him his best friend and told this anecdote about after one of the 5 and 7 seasons, Kalani took off to Oregon State, and Morgan and Sharif found themselves just sitting in the film room and not knowing if they were even going to have jobs. And so Morgan just said, I didn't know what else to do. We just turned on the tape and we went to work. And just wondered if you had any insight on kind of that relationship between the two of them, and then just from a macro standpoint, what Sharif Shah means to Utah football.
yeah, I mean, I won't speak too much to their relationship because that's probably for them to speak about, and I don't fully know. But I just can't say enough good things about both of them. I truly don't think there's a better combination of quality coaches and quality men than that duo. And I would have said the same thing about when Witt was there. Witt and Reef and Scally all together just embody what I view as, great coaches that can also show and teach the way great men should be. And so they both are just as good as it gets in my eyes. And yeah, I love them both to death, and I just have a ton of respect for both of them is kind of where I'll leave it.
So you referenced the financial side of this stuff, and I kind of find it interesting to try to understand how this is all going to work. And it feels like every school has a different path to financial support and economic models that work for the individual institution. And, when you look at it, Texas Tech has Cody Campbell and oil money. Michigan has, I think it's the CEO of Oracle, because his wife went there and he's worth billions. They've got a $20 billion endowment. Before Utah consummated their private equity deal, the Big Ten actually had a private equity deal in place, and all of the member institutions were on board except for Michigan and USC because they don't need it. So they elected to push back on it. Utah's answer to that, Chase, appears to be private equity. Now, the deal was announced a number of weeks ago at this point. There have been several grandma requests filed by the Salt Lake Tribune and others to try to figure out exactly what it is. Those requests have been denied up to this point. We'll see what sort of information we can get. But the reports are it's about $500 million. And, the $500 million isn't necessarily just what Oaktree Capital is giving to Utah, because they're allowing some of their very powerful alums and boosters to invest in the project. Do we know who they are at this point? No, but I've been told their names are on the building, so we can figure out who it is. What do you think?
Right.
What do you think of this dynamic? Because even Witt himself said, if you don't have NIL, you don't have anything. Do you think this is going to be the answer that we need to the powerful, rich alumni at BYU and the oil money at Texas Tech?
I don't know. And the private equity entrance was and is fascinating to me, and I am fascinated to see how that's dispersed, how it's managed, who makes the decision, how does, I mean, private equity is their business too, and so they expect a return on that money. It's not free money. So what their expectations are fascinating as well. Not to get too into the weeds on this, but I just ever since I finished playing, something that's kind of become a personal interest and fascination of mine is just how teams are managed. From a general management standpoint in professional sports, and now we have GMs in college football. So how that money's dispersed from a player and a organization standpoint is going to be really interesting, and how you build up the value of a public school, public organization is, I mean, it's so many moving parts that I'm so interested to see what happens. And, I'm not giving you much here, but I guess my answer is I don't know if it's the answer, but I think that's, Utah football saying, hey, we're not just going to be we're not just going to kind of take a seat or a back seat to all these big money schools. We're going to make a move, even if it means, also taking some risks. So I appreciate the idea of it. How it's going to work, I have no idea.
Chase Hansen is with us. He was an all Pac-12 linebacker for Utah back in 2018. Chase, it's refreshing in my ecosystem just to hear somebody admit that they don't know. I exist in a space where the charlatans who believe and fake like they know everything are exhausting. So I actually appreciate the fact that you're willing to say, I don't know. Well, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of the reality of the system right now. I feel like most people don't know how it's going to play out. I mean, I might be wrong in this statement, but it's got to be one of, if not the first time, a private equity institution has come in and put money towards, college football team like this, especially at, that price point. So a lot of unknowns, how much control that group will have and how it's all going to work, how it's going to be structured, again, is going to be interesting. I think the hope is it's just a gamble, and a gamble that pays off as long as it's managed properly within the organization.
Do you have any personal interest in getting into management of teams at all? I know you're building a business on your own that we'll talk about in a minute, but do you have any interest in doing something like that down the road, maybe?
Short answer is yeah, I do. That interests me. Whether or not that happens and if that becomes, a part of the plan is up in the air. So it is an interest, though.
All right, what are you doing across the pond? What are you doing in the UK? You watching some Premiership soccer? What's going on with you?
Something like that. I'm getting my master's in business out here in Oxford, and really that's just an excuse for me to come out and travel and be adventurous out here. But I'm getting my MBA currently here in Oxford in the UK. So.
Attaboy. You've always kind of had that kind of side of you, right? Like the desire to get out and see the world and experience other things. Where do you think that's steeped in?
Where do I what? Sorry.
No, as far as your curiosity when it comes to all your travels and wanting to go kind of explore and have adventures, where does that come from?
Yeah, I mean, not to take us too off of sports here, but I think I've just always been fascinated by, what's out there. Like there's so much to see, the different cultures and places and people, and I'm obsessed with nature and different foods and having new experiences. It's just there's a deep interest also for international business and the way people are doing good and making a difference and adding value to the world through business, not just in the U.S. but outside the U.S. And this felt like a great combination for me to come out and kind of explore all of it and kind of expand my horizons, and also an opportunity, like you said, to adventure and kind of see the world. And where that comes from, I'm not totally sure. I just know that I love the adventure. I love meeting the people, having the experience, very very connective and deep and enriching, and then kind of adding an element of building business and doing good throughout the world as well is just very appealing to me. So yeah, it's kind of this cool mixture of all of it right now, and it's it's different, it's unique, and I'm enjoying it.
I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that you don't watch a lot of football anymore. Is that fair?
I want to, Spence. I'm really sad to say that I haven't been able to, but honestly, I blame the TV networks that won't let me watch it out here. It's a little bit tricky.
Do you even know who's playing in the Super Bowl?
I do. I have a passionate family of siblings who keep me updated on everything, and I see highlights. You know, I keep up on headlines. So, yeah, is the short answer.
Will you be so bold as to give us a guess or a pick, or do you have a rooting interest? I mean, you played for the Saints, but they're not in it. So do you have a rooting interest to win this game?
I am a fan of Sam Darnold. I played with Rashid Shaheed, and he is as good of a dude as they get. Hunter O'Toole, if I'm not mistaken, is still with Seattle.
Correct.
And I think Seattle's a really cool organization. So I personally think Seattle is just a better team, and I think it's sadly, if I were to make a guess, would be that Seattle wins it by a long shot, and that's coming from a guy who has not watched a single football game all year. But that's what my hunch says. So we'll see how good my hunch is.
So I'm a little bit biased, but London might be maybe my favorite city in the world. And I haven't seen the entire world, but I've seen enough to know what's good and what's not. How are you enjoying just where you find your feet at? How are you enjoying the city?
I love it. It's cool to be in a place where there's also so much close by. I mean, I love London. I especially love Oxford. It's an incredibly unique and historical city. I also just love being close enough to, you know, jump over to other cities and other countries and just, you know, everything just feels right here. And that's really cool. And Oxford itself is just incredibly unique. You know, talking to different people every day who are studying something different, who are, you know, just the impact they're having on the world of business right here in this one little town is pretty fascinating. And I feel like a fish out of water a little bit, because the people I talk to are just brilliant, and that's very challenging and fascinating in all the best ways. And in terms of London and the UK, the winter has been as brutal as I've heard in terms of the weather. So I don't think I've seen the sun in about a month. Outside of that, I love it. I wouldn't say London's my favorite city, but it's one of them, and I appreciate the place very much so.
Love to hear that. Hey, before I set you loose, tell our listeners about Oomph Athlete. How's it going? How's the progress? Where can they find more information?
I love it. You're always willing to give me a little plug.
Of course.
Yeah, Oomph Athlete is doing great. I guess for those who are listening maybe for the first time, it's a sport performance supplement. We have a single product, and we're constantly improving on it and improving the flavor. Basically, it's doing well. We're, you know, the Saints are one of our teams now that we're working with and have the product, and they're building. The Utes are another one, and, you know, we're selling to other collegiate and pro teams, and it's going well. Essentially, it's a single product that athletes take before games. It's super clean, great for performance, all that stuff. That's my spiel, but it's a great product, and it's doing well right now. We're continuing to expand and grow, and you know, develop new products coming soon as well. So it's been a good opportunity to kind of take what I'm learning here in business school as well and apply it to the current business that I'm running, which is, you know, products and services specifically for athletes to improve their performance and improve their health. So yeah, it's going well. I appreciate the quick plug there.
You got it, man. All right, my friend, don't forget about us little people when you go on to run the world, but enjoy that experience you're having over there. I really appreciate your time. We'll set you loose, okay?
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right, Chase Hansen, all Pac-12 linebacker for Utah football back in 2018. Chase feels like one of those guys. You know what? I'm going to tell you what I was about to say. I'll tell you during the break because I don't like to use his name as propaganda. But it feels like when football was over for Chase, he was able to just kind of move on to the next thing and not kind of long for what was in the rear view, which I think is pretty admirable.
Right. And this is not anyone specific, but everyone listening right now can think of a player that they knew or loved and cheered for, and they were maybe a little worried about like what they would do when football was over. Never the case with Chase Hansen. I always knew he'd be doing something productive and fun. Britton Covey, right? Like, I hope that Britton Covey plays several more years in the league and is successful. But the second that he's done, I know that he's not only going to have like a book deal lined up and a show of his own and all of the above. He's going to have some other sort of plan that he's already been working on for a long time, and that's kind of the lane you're thinking of.
Britton will have his choice.
Governor or coach?
He might just walk in and be like, hey, Morgan, nice run, but it's my turn. You want to be my DC? I mean, I kid. But Britton Covey is the type of guy that will have tremendous options when he's done.
And part of that is just because who he is, genuinely like one of my favorite humans on the planet. But also, I mean, the connections and the people he knows and the places he's been. Good for him.
Yeah, for sure. So appreciate Chase's time. We'll catch a break. Smooth Freddie Coleman is going to join us right out of the gates, 3 o'clock hour. Going to move over to Smitty for a little bit, Zach Harper, and the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley. We've got a good show. Good show booked by Porter today on this Tuesday. But before we catch a break, we have a new client on the show. And it's my favorite type of client because it's actually steeped in my relationship with them, my personal experience, and I can just tell you exactly how this has gone down for me. And I can promise you, if you followed the same routine, it will happen for you. So a couple of years ago, I made a goal, as we all do, and January is now behind us. You may have made a New Year's resolution to lose a little weight, get back in shape, or maybe you need to lose a lot of weight and you feel like your health is kind of at stake now. Well, January's behind us. How's the progress going? If you feel a little bit frustrated, I can promise you that if you follow the routine and the program set for free, by the way, at Game Day Men's Health, you will see the same results I did. I started working out. I started eating clean. I changed some habits, and within a few months, I was really frustrated that I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted to see. And I had a friend recommend Game Day Men's Health and said, have you ever tried to supplement testosterone? Which I had not. And I have one more year left in my mid-40s, and I have to admit that I've aged into my late 40s, and it's just harder as you get older to get back in shape. So went into Game Day Men's Health. Here's the process. They're doing the exact same thing for you. It's a free consultation. What does that look like? A little bit of blood work. It takes 10 minutes. And then they sit down with you and go over your lab results. I went back in last week because they follow up with you every 3 months. That's part of the program, and that's what makes it awesome. Because 2 years later, I've been able to maintain the shape. It's one thing if it's like a fad diet, you lose some weight, then 2 months later, you're back at it. This helps you lose the weight, get back in shape, and then maintain the shape. So it is a free consultation, but here's the kicker. When you schedule your free consultation at GameDayMen'sHealth.com, locations in Lehigh, Pleasant Grove, Cottonwood Heights, and South Ogden, when you schedule that consultation, if you say, hey, I heard Spence talking about this on his show, they're giving you 50% off your membership all year long. All year long. And it is February, right? The way I understand calendars is February is the second month of the year. So if you had this deal in November, you only had a couple of months with the deal. With this, you get 50% off all year long. It's the same deal they give me. So if you want to lose a little weight, lose a lot of weight, get back in shape, go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now. That's Game Day Men's Health. 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Freddie Coleman is our guest coming up next on ESPN 700. Utah Jazz make a massive trade today. Will we look back on February the 3rd, the year of our Lord 2026, as the day the Jazz made a trade that got them back into at least, a relatively competitive space in the Western Conference, Super Bowl 60 on the way? But our next guest, the smoothest man in radio, good enough to join us from time to time from ESPN Radio, my friend Freddie Coleman, on a Tuesday afternoon. Freddie, happy Tuesday, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, my friend. How's everything with you on a happy Tuesday?
Everything's great. I always appreciate your time, and I could just sit back and listen to you talk all day, which I do when you're on air because of the dulcet tones of Freddie Coleman. So, look, we got to start with the lead out this way. It's been a frustrating 4-year stretch since the trades of Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, but there have been some signs of some players making some strides, and today Austin Ainge and the Jazz front office expedite the growth by adding Jaren Jackson Jr. to the court. What do you think, Freddie?
Well, now you add another person to your front line that can be that scorer that can not only provide that rim protection. This is a man that's made a couple of defensive teams and a former defensive player of the year, but also a guy that can be an inside-outside scorer. So now you pair with Lauri Markkanen as well as Nurkic. You got a front line that can guard 3 different positions and also have that kind of ability to really control things in the offensive end.
And, the interesting thing, Freddie, about Jaren Jackson Jr., because the Jazz, and you referenced Nurkic, who's played really well this year, but, of course, Walker Kessler is their future center. And there's some concern, I think, with folks in the market, like, well, wait a second, Jaren Jackson Jr., Walker Kessler, what does that look like? The thing about Jaren Jackson Jr. is he doesn't rebound on an incredibly high level. He averages about 5.5 boards per game. He actually needs a center like Walker Kessler. So the way I envision this, and only time will tell, I think they've done their calculation. They believe Ace Bailey is their 2. Ace is 6'10". Lauri Markkanen, small forward, 6'11". Jaren Jackson Jr., power forward, 6'9". Walker Kessler, center, 7'1". I mean, that is a massive lineup of a lot of athletes with a lot of length. It's going to be hard to score on this team, I think, moving forward.
And especially if they find that connectivity defensively, and that's one of the biggest things when you have a front line like that. You make it very difficult to have those wide open windows to shoot the ball from the outside, or you drive and get to the paint and kick it out to other people. Now you have that length that can shut those things off and then recover, because Jaren Jackson's so good at that, where he can guard the paint and also get to shooters on the outside and make it a very difficult shot where they don't get those kind of open looks. It's going to be very interesting how they're going to try to make this work with that kind of length on the front line, where they have a lot of long guys that play like smaller guys. So we'll see in modern basketball, how the pace of space and teams going small ball, having a much longer lineup. We'll see exactly how they'll be able to make that work. They can make that happen sooner than later. This could be a really interesting team going into the future, because they still have a lot of that youth on their side, especially in the front line.
And they do maintain this year's draft pick, and to me that indicates Jaren Jackson Jr. is flying to Salt Lake to find out that he has a bad back he doesn't know about. I mean, I think they're just going to, they're going to play their way into the draft lottery and hope they get some lottery luck. And, we have A.J. DeBonsa playing his college ball here in Utah down at Provo at BYU, and Darren Peterson, of course, playing at Kansas. We saw the two go head-to-head last week. Cam Boozer in the mix as well, but I think with this deal, the Jazz would very much enjoy the opportunity to pick between Darren Peterson and A.J. DeBonsa. Who wouldn't? They're both generational. Any thoughts on who you think the number 1 pick in the draft is going to be this year?
Well, I think it's going to be Peterson, provided that his health is going to be there, because we saw what he was able to do, and especially last night where they're losing that game to Texas Tech, and just by his sheer will on the bench and guys feeding off of that, those kind of players, like you mentioned, are potential generational players that they can change your franchise. And his ability that he can play at any kind of speed. He can slow it down. He can speed it up. He's so good in the pick and roll. He's so good taking over games. And DeBonsa is pretty much the same guy as well, a little bit taller than Peterson. And we've seen he's been able to do that for BYU. So whoever you wind up with in the draft, you're Utah, you get either one of those guys, then all of a sudden you really have a potential nucleus that will be able to challenge Oklahoma City and the San Antonio Spurs and the Houston Rockets, and just like anybody else in the Western Conference, and have that future on your side with a lot of age on your side as well.
Wonder what your thoughts are on the current state of our basketball team that resides in Midtown Manhattan, the New York Knicks, who have turned it around as of late. They won 6 straight. I wasn't able to talk to you last year during that great, exciting run to the Eastern Conference Finals. I have no idea why they moved on from Tom Thibodeau. Like, it was stunning to me that we finally had a relevant team, and ownership elected to move on from Tom. But hey, here we are, and they've been playing a little bit better as of late. The trade deadline is 2 days away. Would you like to see them do something? Because Freddie, it feels like the East is wide open this year.
It is wide open, but I really don't think they have to do anything, especially if they continue to play defense like we've seen in this 6-game winning streak at a high level, where no one's even scoring 92 points per game. That's the best by any team over that span in the NBA with that 6-game winning streak that the New York Knicks are on. But I think we've been able to see why they made that change. That as good as Tom Thibodeau was making the New York Knicks a relevant and a team that matters in the Eastern Conference, he was running his guys into the ground, specifically Jalen Brunson. If your best player is going to be 6'2" and below, then you got to make sure you have taller guys that can help him out when it comes to scoring and defense. We've seen a better sharing of the basketball, not just for Karl Anthony Towns, but OG Anunoby has been terrific this year. Josh Hart has been terrific this year. Getting Landry Shamet back off the bench with him and Miles McBride together, what they've been able to do. Mitchell Robinson, for my money, is the best offensive rebounder in the NBA. Not too many teams can have their two best players, what we saw against the Los Angeles Lakers on Sunday. They don't even combine for 25 points, and yet the Knicks went going away. If that happened reversed between Luka Doncic and LeBron James, and they don't score 25 points combined, the Lakers were lost by 50 points. So I think that's why it's been a big difference, because you have these kind of people on your bench, and you just can't run your starters out there all the time and wear them down, then have nothing left in the playoffs. By enabling guys to come off the bench and having that trust in them, they've been able to validate that trust that Mike Brown has put in them. It's probably going to make the Knicks a better basketball team once the playoffs roll around.
When you look at the landscape of the East, and, Dennis Lindsey was the general manager of the Utah Jazz when I was with the Jazz, so I got to know him really well. He and Trajan Langdon deserve a lot of credit for this Detroit Pistons team. It's fun, Freddie. It's back. We're throwing back to the day where it's the Pistons, Knicks, and the Celtics at the top of this conference right now. But are you a believer in Detroit? Do you like the Knicks' chances? Boston just traded for Nikola Vucevic, and obviously Jaylen Brown has been insane with Jason Tatum on the sideline. Who do you like in the East this year, and why?
Yeah, I still think I'm going to take the Knicks because they have that playoff experience. I think because they're using that bench, having a deeper bench. Detroit believes that they can win against anybody, and so far so good. But as they understood last year, regular season basketball and postseason basketball is not going to be the same, and especially there's going to be more expectation with the Detroit Pistons team that has the best record right now in the Eastern Conference. And they had to move on from Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey is a very talented player, but the way that Cade Cunningham has become a killer for the Detroit Pistons, both ends of the floor, he was never, ever going to be the kind of player that they thought he was going to be when you got that superpower force for your basketball team. But now you add shooters on the outside. You get Herter from Chicago. That's going to help space the floor for the Detroit Pistons and make Cade Cunningham even more effective. But I think those are the top three teams right now. I know Toronto's plays better than anybody could have imagined. If the Philadelphia 76ers can stay healthy, they could be in the mix for losing Paul George for 25 games. That's going to be very difficult, even though Tyrese Maxey is one of the best guards in the East. But I think you have those two teams, the Pistons and the Knicks, eyeing each other. They know exactly what each other can do. I think they're better teams this year than they were last year. I put those two teams with Boston a little bit below them as the top team in the Eastern Conference.
Look, Doc Rivers was a Knick, and I can remember Austin Rivers running around with his he had a big old afro when he was a kid, running around spilling M&Ms in the green room. Like, I love the Rivers family, but Adrian Griffin was 36-14 when Milwaukee decided to move on from him. And everything has fallen apart since. I'm not putting it all on Doc, but ultimately that has led to this weird dynamic where a generational player is apparently on the block and is there to be had in Giannis, who is 31. He's not 40, but he's not 22 either. What do you think makes the most sense as far as a potential Giannis deal? How do you see this playing out?
Well, it makes sense that they should trade Giannis Antetokounmpo, but they had a chance to do this last summer, but nobody wanted to stand up and say, okay, how can we get this done? I think they both decided maybe we can try to work this out when it didn't seem to be the right decision to be made involving Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks staying together. So they had the opportunity last year that maybe he goes to the Knicks, maybe you get a haul in return or go somewhere else. Now, whatever leverage that you thought you had may have completely gone by the wayside. You still may be able to trade him by the Thursday deadline in the NBA, but the kind of haul you're going to get is not the kind of haul you could have gotten if you had done this in the summertime. And also with Giannis Antetokounmpo, the minute that he self-diagnosed himself with that calf strain, that reduced any potential trade value that could help the Milwaukee Bucks, because now teams are going to say, as great as he is, do we want to trade for a guy at 31 years of age that has had different calf injuries, 4 different calf injuries in the last 18 months. Usually you have those kind of injuries starting, you become an older player. That never goes back the other way. So that's going to give a lot of teams, maybe like the Knicks, maybe like the Golden State Warriors, even Minnesota, a little pause for the cause, wondering, we know what we're getting, but what if it breaks down? And we gave up a lot for him, and it's not working out as far as we're concerned.
You had referenced earlier, out here in the West, teams trying to jockey with Oklahoma City and San Antonio. And, those two head-to-head have been fun to watch, and the Spurs have actually got the better of them. It does feel like OKC unlocked something a year ago when they learned how to do it, and when they're healthy, I still believe they should be and are the Vegas favorite. Denver has Nikola Jokic, and any team that has Jokic, to me, will have a puncher's chance. The Rockets with Durant have been a little bit intriguing. The T-Wolves made some moves today. LeBron James still lives in Los Angeles, so I'll ask it this way. Outside of Oklahoma City and San Antonio, do you think there are any of these other teams that will have something to say about the West, or does it feel like those two?
It's those two, but if you have a Houston Rockets team, the way that they can score and defend, where you got Amin Thompson, one of the better two-way players in the league, you got Kevin Durant, and also Al Shangun in the front line that can really cause problems for teams. Their lack of point guard has not been able to be a detriment because of the fact that those guys are such good playmakers that they can play positionless basketball, not having Fred VanVleet. The Houston Rockets definitely belong in that mix as a team that could give Oklahoma City a problem, give San Antonio a problem. Same thing with the Denver Nuggets. They have a deeper team this year than they did last year because they fortified their bench. They were able to survive losing Nikola Jokic and not having a less than 500 record. So now that he's back, they're going to get Aaron Gordon back in a couple of weeks. That's a team that pushed the Oklahoma City Thunder to the limit. They forced them to beat them in 7 games in the Western Conference semifinals. So they don't have any fear factor when it comes to Oklahoma City because Denver rightfully believes that they can find a way to beat them in a 7-game series that they were not able to do last year. So I think those are the 4. Other teams are not bad. Phoenix having a really good season. Devin Booker's been terrific with his basketball team, along with Dylan Brooks. Golden State, if they can find a way to get a trade, maybe with Giannis, that puts them in the mix. But I think that's the big 4 in the Western Conference. In that order, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Denver, and Houston.
Since I referenced LeBron, and Freddie Coleman is with us, the legend from ESPN Radio, he gets emotional in Cleveland. It appeared to be a pretty touching scene for him at the Garden over the weekend. If this isn't it for him, Freddie, it's the December of the LeBron James experience as he potentially walks away as the greatest player of this generation. My opinion on that entire conversation from a macro viewpoint will always be the gentleman who I watched rip rings off my favorite team's fingers, Michael Jordan, in the 90s. But anyway, LeBron deserves the credit for an unbelievable run. What would you like the final chapter of his career to look like?
As long as he's still an effective player, I'm completely okay with that because it can be very intoxicating that you're still playing like that if you're LeBron James, although you can tell that Father Time has jumped on his back a little bit more. Now he'll have a great start to the game, but then he peters out towards the end because he's played so much basketball and he's playing his 23rd season in the NBA. You can't expect him to be a full tilt boogie throughout a whole ball game for a sustained period of time. As long as he can be an effective player, I don't think anybody's going to mind seeing that kind of LeBron James. And he knows his body. He knows the landscape. If he believes he can't be that kind of contributor, he's not going to be a guy that just wants to be on the team just to hang around. The Lakers still need him if they're going to have any chance to play winning basketball, him and Luka Doncic, when Austin Reeves gets back. But it's going to be very interesting this summer because I wonder how much of the Lakers and LeBron are probably saying to each other, okay, we need to move on from this. And does he go somewhere else for a victory tribute tour? And who is he going to do that with? Does he go like Cleveland or somewhere else? That's where things going to get real interesting, that once the season's over, because they're not a championship team. And once that's done, once that's said and done, then what do the Lakers and LeBron James do? Either try to stay together for one more year or they go their separate ways, and then the Lakers can start their future and LeBron can play out the rest of his career.
All right, a few minutes left, Freddie. Let's do some football here. And my first question is, it's interesting because we're the flagship home of the Utah Athletic Department. We have Utah football and basketball on the station. There are other events. And once upon a time, a young man named Fernando Mendoza had his second career start in college at Cal here in Salt Lake City. And I was on the sideline for that game. And it was a good Utah team, but I can remember watching and thinking, man, this kid stinks. He's not very good. And then here we are. He's the Heisman Trophy winner. He's a national champion, and he will be the #1 pick in the NFL draft. What kind of NFL quarterback do you think Mendoza will make, and what should Raider fans expect?
Well, the one thing if you're a Raiders fan that when your team drafts him number one, you got Clint Kubiak, who knows how to coach quarterbacks, the offensive coordinator in Seattle that's going to be a head coach. Number two, you got Tom Brady in this organization. I think he knows a little something about being a quarterback and a successful one in the National Football League. So automatically, you have those two components that are going to give you the best chance to succeed early, and you don't have to wait as long. Fernando Mendoza, he checks off the boxes, plays well in the pocket, knows how to read defenses, has that toughness about him, can make all three level throws to make things successful for your football team and keep drives going. I believe that's the kind of quarterback they're going to get. He was able to take advantage of the fact that he wasn't bad at Cal that second year he played at Cal. Then he goes to Indiana and put the world apart because he was coached properly by Coach Cignetti and that staff. He gets any kind of that coaching I believe he's going to get going forward to Las Vegas Raiders. He may not be a superstar early, but it won't take long because he seems to be the kind of guy that he's going to keep maximizing his potential and his ability, being in the right situation and being coached the right way.
Jackson Dart played his high school football out here in Utah. I've got a lot of family members that love the New York Giants. It feels like John Harbaugh is one of those coaches that he's going to be able to get this thing going the right way pretty quickly. What are your expectations for John Harbaugh as the head coach of the Giants year one?
Well, it was very interesting that they wanted Cliff Kingsbury to be the offensive coordinator. He decided to turn them down because I thought that would have been a perfect guy to have the kind of offense you need around Jackson Dart with John Harbaugh. So now they bring in Matt Nagy, who has learned at the feet of Andy Reid, but can he be able to do that with a Jackson Dart that has the part? And what I mean by that is he can play the part of being a successful quarterback as long as he doesn't get in his way. And I think he's going to be taught that by John Harbaugh. But can Matt Nagy do that? Being around Patrick Mahomes and being around Andy Reid, he understands exactly how to coach that kind of multi-threat quarterback that Jackson Dart is going to be. But doing it in New York with John Harbaugh, Super Bowl winning coach, and also people look at Jackson Dart and they wonder, can he overcome himself at times by trying to be too tough for his own good? That's the kind of marriage I want to see how that's going to work, because we know he has ability, but the best ability is availability, and you can't have your guy where you got to worry about him being too tough for his position or making reckless plays running the football, and then you don't have it because of concussion protocol that he's going to be in that we saw way too many times in his rookie season.
Moving over to Super Bowl 60 coming up on Sunday, and we'll have that game, of course, on this radio station. You know, I referenced some of my family members that are Giants fans. For some reason, as a misguided child, I chose the New York Football Jets, which continues to make me suffer. But I thought Sam Darnold was kind of the guy that when we had drafted him after watching him play out here against the Utes in the Pac-12, he had a chance to be a very good quarterback. And ultimately, he took the long road, the one less traveled by, but he now becomes the first quarterback in USC history to start in a Super Bowl. It's quite a story, Freddie. What do you make of it?
I'm happy for Sam Darnold because what he's been able to, what he went through with the New York Jets and then tossed on the scrap heap with the Carolina Panthers, and people said when he went to the San Francisco 49ers, why are you taking a chance on that guy? Well, Kyle Shanahan, the healing hands once again, he had a chance to understand exactly what can make a successful offense playing the quarterback position. Then he goes there, then he goes to the Minnesota Vikings and wins 14 games to that football team. And the Seattle Seahawks basically said, okay, that's the guy we need. We're a quarterback away. He's that quarterback. And Clint Kubiak and Mike McDonald did a fantastic job with Sam Darnold that he kept getting better and better in big games. And I thought when he won that regular season game in overtime against the Los Angeles Rams, that really hit as much confidence as they had in him from a team standpoint. They had even more that said, man, he outdid Matthew Stafford in the second half, made those kind of plays. We're ready to rock and roll right now, and he has not been slowed down ever since. So I feel nothing but happiness for Sam Darnold, how he was able to do that, overcome that, and get to this point where he has a chance to win a championship out of that draft class of 2018. On
the other side, of course, as a Jet fan, I'm not ready for another generation of Patriot football where they're awesome, but it looks like that's what we're in for, is Mike Vrabel and Drake May. And that defense, they're back in the Super Bowl. Freddie, what do you make of winning 4 games a year ago, now potentially winning the whole thing?
Well, Mike Vrabel has done a fantastic job as a coach, but I think Elliott Wolf, their player personnel director, did a terrific job with free agents and draft choices. It seemed like anybody that they brought to the Patriots, they were able to hit on. When you get Milton Williams, who's been, in my opinion, the best interior defensive lineman in the playoffs. He's been terrific with that pass rush and also stopping and run for the Patriots. Christian Gonzalez staying healthy. He is definitely a shutdown corner. Drake May surrounding him with Stephon Diggs and drafting Travion Henderson out of Ohio State with that offensive line having rookies at the left tackle and left guard position. And then you have Josh McDaniels orchestrating things on one side and the defense on the other side. Mike Vrabel having the ability to push all the right buttons with a relatively young team, first time together, and quality veterans, man, oh man, people thought they were going to be improved. They knew they were going to be improved. Nobody saw a 10-win improvement and a team getting to the Super Bowl in barely less than a calendar year.
Last thing, Freddie, before I say you lose, Seattle remains a 4.5-point favorite. The line really hasn't moved much at all. How do you think it goes down? Who you got? What do you think happens Super Bowl 60 coming up on Sunday?
Well, my gut says Seattle because of the way they can play defense, and Drake may be in compromise a little bit with that shoulder, but I think he's going to be fine. But just the way they have an all-out effort on defense, and Jackson Smith and Jigba may want to be in the best player in the field with that running game of Seattle. If Drake may struggles a little bit, the defense may not be able to bail him out because that offense on the other side is really so well designed to generate big plays and run the football and keep you on your toes and keep you on the field. Seattle, I think, finds a way to win this ball game. It won't be easy because it never is in the Super Bowl usually. But I think the Seahawks might have winning their second championship.
Freddie, thanks so much for the time, man. I always appreciate it. I hope you're well, and stay safe. We'll chat soon, okay?
Sounds good, my friend. Enjoy the Super Bowl as well.
All right, Freddie Coleman, ESPN Radio, at Coleman ESPN on social media. Want to let you know that Post Malone and Jelly Roll are taking over Rice Eccles Stadium on July the 28th. You can text now to win a pair of tickets to 877-353-0700. More details on our app and on ESPN700sports.com. Text, we don't do this much. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? Give me your score. 877-353-0700. Porter will pick somebody to win tickets to see Post Malone and Jelly Roll, Rice Eccles Stadium on July the 28th. All right, we will catch a break. Richard Smith, our NBA front office insider, spent 40 years with the Utah Jazz as a voice in the room as part of deals that were made kind of like today. So we'll bring in Smitty. We've got NBA Daily Assist style with Zach Harper. We've got the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley. We've got a good show the rest of the way on this Tuesday afternoon. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. Lindsey Vonn is actually planning to ski despite tearing an ACL. I tore my meniscus a couple years ago, and I didn't walk for like 2 months. How does one do this?
And she also said apparently it's like a full tear. It's not a partial tear.
Oh.
It's all the way gone. So there must be some sort of brace or some sort of medical something we're not privy to she's got going on. Because that sounds like you're gonna get hurt.
I'm no expert, but it feels like you need your ACL to ski.
Very much for skiing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. I'm assuming she's gonna have a big old brace on her leg and just try to get down the slope.
Okay.
But good luck with it.
Utah's own Lindsey Vonn. She resides in our state. All right, big day in the ecosystem of the Utah Jazz and fans out this way as the Jazz have acquired Jaren Jackson Jr. We went over the particulars of the deal a little bit earlier, so I will not waste your time doing that. But let's bring in our front office insider. He spent 40 years with the Utah Jazz as a voice in the room, making deals such as this, the great Richard Smith on a Tuesday. Hello, Smitty. How are you, sir?
Spence, how we doing?
We're good. So let's just get your instant reaction to a deal that most people did not see coming. I certainly didn't.
Yeah, I didn't see it coming, Spence, but I'll tell you what, this is big time. This is what the Jazz have been sitting on and waiting for. I think we've talked about it in the past, Spence, where they were accumulating all these assets, all these draft capital. And I think one time we used the phrase, the analogy that they were like sitting there with this whole horde of draft picks in their lap and just sitting at the bus stop and just waiting for the right bus to come along to get on and take that ride. And you never know what is going on with the other 29 teams. We've talked about this before. Everybody has moving parts, different things that come and go in their organizations. And you just want to be in a position to have the flexibility and the ability to pounce on something when a situation exactly like this presents itself, because you never know when it's going to happen. Look, Memphis just 2 years ago went into the playoffs as the number 2 seed and had a young core around Jaren Jackson and John Morant, and they were poised to do that for 6, 7, 8 years, supposedly. And now in a short span of time, it starts falling apart for them, and they decide they're going to redo everything, and they put Jaren Jackson on the market, and the Jazz are sitting there with all these draft picks and guys they're willing to move, and the guys they gave up weren't doing anything in terms of helping the Jazz currently to move forward in their process. And so really, in my opinion, all they gave up were the 3 draft picks, but they still held on to this year's pick. They still have a horde, 8 draft picks in the coming 5 years that they still have in their treasure chest. So this is a big move. This Spence is really like them cashing in on the free agent market, just doing so 4 or 5 months early. So this is the kind of guy that they would have hoped to be able to at least talk to about signing and bringing in as a free agent type deal, but instead they get him where he's under contract for 3 more years and then a player option the 4th year. So you're going to have plenty of time to get him assimilated, get him into your situation, pair him up with your guys. And this is, in my opinion, this is nothing short of a grand slam home run for the Jazz.
I tend to agree with you. Now, we'll get into some of the particulars, and I applaud the front office for taking this step forward. I mean, I've been critical of what I have perceived to be a lack of boldness, and this is very bold. And Jaren Jackson Jr. is only 26 years old, as you referenced, a Defensive Player of the Year. And so when it comes to the way he fits in, Smitty, let's get into this for a moment. He doesn't actually rebound at a very high clip. I think a lot of people might be surprised to learn that about a 6'9" player who can really, really guard. He can guard on the interior and on the perimeter. He can really switch 1 through 5, but only averages about 5 boards a game. So actually the fit next to Walker Kessler, to me, Smitty, is something that makes sense, and maybe Lowry is better served as your 3. Have they done the calculation that Ace is going to be your 2 guard? And what does that mean for Keontae? And do they need to make a move to have a better lead guard As far as an offensive initiator, those are questions that will have to kind of manifest in the future. But how does Jaren Jackson Jr. fit in with this team?
Well, first of all, Spence, he's a little bigger than 6'9". He's all of 6'10", and he's long. He's over 7 foot wingspan. I mean, he's a long and active guy. How he fits in, they'll get him in and they'll figure that out. He's a guy, Spence, that if you can get him and he's under contract like he is, and the Jazz gave what they gave, which is not nothing, but for me, it was really well worth a guy that is a proven guy in the NBA who's just coming into his prime, who's under a multi-year contract, and he provides something the Jazz don't have, which is a switchable, defensive-minded guy that can protect the rim, that can get in the lane, can also go out on the perimeter. He can guard anybody practically within reason, Spence, in any position on the floor because of his athleticism, his length, and his versatility. So this is the kind of guy you would hope to be able to find somewhere. The fact that he falls into your lap in a trade situation where another team has decided that they're going to make major changes, this is a huge coup, and again, my opinion, for the Jazz to be able to pounce on it and to be able to actually get it done. And so now you bring him in. The next question is going to be, now what do the Jazz do with the Walker Kessler situation? He's a restricted free agent, so the Jazz will have control over that. So that means that for our listeners, the Jazz are going to give him an offer. His agent is going to try and go out and get a better offer, a higher number on a contract, which they can do. And he's going to try and get an offer sheet from somebody much like Gordon Hayward did several years ago from the Celtics. And then, I'm sorry, when Gordon Hayward decided to go to the
Charlotte
off his rookie deal with Charlotte, got a better offer, brought it back, and the Jazz matched it. So now Walker Kessler's agent is going to try and do the same thing. What kind of number does he get? Who knows? That remains to be seen. It's going to be a big number. But what the Jazz did now, Spence, in this coming summer, they were going to have something in the neighborhood of $45 to $48 million to spend in free agency. What they did in this move was they just made that free agent move now. So that number they would have had this summer kind of moves down to now somewhere between the 12 and $15 million area. And so they're going to be looking at a mid-level exception, possibly with a guy on the market. But now that plays into the Walker Kessler situation. Walker Kessler is going to get more than $15 million, whether it's from the Jazz or somebody else. So then the Jazz are going to be in a position to decide, do we decide to go into the luxury tax to sign Walker Kessler and pair him and have this big front line of Markkanen, Jackson, and Kessler? Or are they going to try and do a sign and trade with someone else? I would think that lining them up with Kessler and signing him would make them really turn things around fairly quickly in terms of their competitiveness and give them a front line that would be quite enviable around the league. So this is very enticing for Jazz fans to keep an eye on this for this coming summer involving Walker Kessler.
And your point about, so just to kind of be clear, you can view this in a way as a free agent signing for the Jazz because they just utilize, if they sign Walker, which I think they will have about 95% of their cap space spent on Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler. And Jaren Jackson Jr. renegotiated his deal a year ago and signed a 4-year contract extension. And he does have a player option in the final year of the deal. But at the very least, Smitty, the Jazz will be able, and Jazz fans will be able to watch Jaren Jackson Jr. through 2029, 2030, right? I mean, he's going to be here. So the Jazz didn't sign him, but they traded for a player that has a contract that will land him here for at least 3, maybe 4 years, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. And this is even better, really, than going into the free agent market, because the free agent market, you have to convince someone that they want to come play with you. You have to convince them that the number that you're offering them makes sense to them and that you're going to be competitive and all these kinds of ancillary things that go into the free agency business. With this move, the Jazz got a guaranteed guy. They have an all-star. They have a former NBA Defensive Player of the Year. They have a guy who's switchable on defense in numerous positions, and he's 26 years old. He's a proven commodity, and he's just coming into what you would hope is his prime years under contract for the Jazz. So all those things line up to be A-pluses when you're talking about the Jazz managing their roster and adding a top-level guy who could help you tremendously. And Spence, we haven't mentioned the fact that, as we have before on the show, that the Jazz the last few years have been one of the worst, if not the worst, defensive team in the league. Now they bring in a guy who's a defensive player of the year, who, he's not Rudy Gobert, but he's in that area in terms of how he can affect your defense. Maybe different than Rudy in that he's switchable and he's not, going to be just in the paint. He can get out on the perimeter. He can move. So this helps the Jazz a lot of ways defensively because now he can help other guys. He can cover for other guys. You can do some different things with your defensive schemes with him. I can't, they're not going to go out and win 60 games next year or anything like that. I'm not predicting that. But in terms of the move, in terms of adding a guy and trying to show your fans and everybody who follows the Jazz that you're trying to build something going forward, holding on to Lauri Markkanen, holding on to your draft pick this year, which will be critical now in the rest of the season to see if they can do that, and adding someone like Jaren Jackson. This is big time. This is a big-time move for them in terms of improving their team going forward.
Let me underscore what you just referenced. So the Jazz did trade 3 first-round picks to Memphis in this deal, but they held on to their pick this year. And as we've talked about all year long, that pick is a top 8 protected pick that goes to the world champion Oklahoma City Thunder if it's out of the bottom 8. So my guess is, Smitty, Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to fly into Salt Lake and learn that he has a bad back, right? Like, I mean, this doesn't change the approach for the rest of the season, does it?
No, I don't think so, Spence, because what's going to happen is, as we've talked about before, the Jazz, to make sure our listeners understand, the Jazz have their own first-round pick, but it's only top 8 protected in the trade they made several years ago with Oklahoma City. So that means if the Jazz have one of the worst 8 records, 1 through 8 in the league, which they currently do, if they stay in that area, they get to keep the pick, and then they go into the lottery system, which, as we learned last year through the Dallas situation, you can have any percentage odds in the lottery, and you may come up with 1, 2, or 3, which is a top-heavy draft this year. So that's going to be big for the Jazz. On the flip side, if they improve the second half of the year, they start winning games, they end up with the 10th, 11th, 12th worst record in the league, they fall out of that bottom 8, then that pick automatically gets conveyed to Oklahoma City, and they get the pick in this upcoming draft. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Jazz handle their roster, handle their lineup the rest of this year. We're going to be able to see whether they're doing the things that they want to do, wink, wink, nod, nod, behind closed doors to make sure they keep that top 8 protected pick. And to reference your comparison there with Jaren Jackson, you may not see him play a lot. You may see them tinkering with lineups and coming in and out, but they're going to be careful with that because that's going to be a big thing. If you get to April, Spence, and you got 6, 7, 8 games left, and you're teetering in that 7, 8, 9, 10, record positioning, that's going to be awfully dicey for them, and then we're really going to see, I would think, some manipulation going on because I really believe the Jazz want to do everything they can within the rules to make sure that they can hold on to that draft pick coming up in June.
Yeah, we've already seen the manipulation. It's happening. It's happening now. It's been happening for the past few weeks. It's not like it's going to change because they made this deal. This is something they're looking at to go all in next year to try to be good. And if we go off of what they have on paper, the official measurements I have in front of me, Keontae George 6'4", Ace Bailey 6'9", Jaren Jackson Jr. 6'10", Lowry Markkanen 7'1", Walker Kessler 7'2". That would be the tallest starting lineup in the history of the NBA. How do you think that works?
Well, again, who knows how it works? That's going to be up to the coaches and how they scheme things. The thing with Jaren Jackson that I can't emphasize enough for our listeners is that he is one of the most athletic, agile, long, big guys that you can find in the NBA, and in this current modern era of the NBA. If you can find long, big guys who can move, who can change direction, who can cover multiple positions, he'd have trouble, like in multiple possessions guarding like the better point guards in the league. Let's not get carried away. But he can guard some of those guys, for 1, 2, 3 possessions on switches or key possessions or something like that, because he can move his feet. He's so long. He reacts well to the ball. He can cause a lot of teams problems on switches and matchups. And so now that gives the Jazz more flexibility with how they want to run their lineups. And if they, let me tell you, you got Markkanen. If you get a healthy Kessler, if they're going to sign him back as a legit rim protector and rebounder, you have Jaren Jackson flying around anywhere on the court, depending where you need him, from possession to possession. You have some sharpshooter like Lowry Markkanen, in the lineup, and then you pair him with a bucket getter who's not a defensive player, but someone like Keontae George, who is going to benefit from someone like Jackson helping to clean up some stuff on his defensive end. Now you've got a very interesting lineup, and now you've got some things you can work on, and now you add in whoever the draft pick would be if they get the draft pick, if they get lucky, even if it's a top 5 pick, you're going to have add another very good young player to that kind of a core. All of a sudden, the Jazz's fortunes, they flip, and now they're a very interesting team going into next year in that kind of a scenario.
So when it comes, when it comes to the way that Will Hardy likes to play offensive basketball, one of the things the Jazz are elite at is scoring off the pass. When it comes to the assist rate, they're one of the best teams in the NBA. When you look at this lineup, there does not appear to be what I would perceive to be like your classic distributor, offensive initiator, decision maker, ball in hand guy. But as they approach the draft, being able to maintain their own pick, if they actually, Smitty, luck in to the #1 overall pick for the first time finally in franchise history, and all of that talent is on the board, I know you've watched all these guys. Who do you think the pick would be and why?
Well, that would be very interesting. In that particular scenario, you'd be having to choose, in my opinion, between the Devonta kid at BYU and the Darren Peterson kid at Kansas. I love Cam Boozer. I think he's going to be another iteration of his dad in terms of being a bucket getter in the lane, a guy who can use either hand. I really like his competitiveness and his smarts on the floor. However, with the lineup that Jazz would have, mentioning Markkanen, Kessler, and Jackson, you're probably going to look at one of those wing guys, who can give you, again, more flexibility athletically, more length out on the perimeter. The Darren Peterson kid is really interesting. Of course, there's going to be a lot of scrutiny about his injury situation this year, being in and out of that Kansas lineup. But when in the handful of games, which is it's only been a handful, that he's played healthy and has been on the floor, he's shown that he's a real guy. And so if you can get a real guy like that, and then you pair him with these other guys we're talking about, all of a sudden, Spence, like you blink and you flip it over, and next fall, the Jazz would be a very interesting team, and they would be a very young team in terms of their NBA years, and would be something that would then be potentially able to grow going forward. So that's what would make that whole thing very interesting, because all those guys would only be in their 20s. So you're not trying to hang on with a guy who's 33 or 35 who can still play or something, but you know the end is coming near. These would be guys who could grow together for several years going forward, and would really make them an interesting team to watch and to follow.
So, I mean, this is going to be a tough question to answer, because there are a lot of things that we don't know as far as how the rest of well, quite frankly, in the next 48 hours will turn out, let alone the summer, let alone the draft. But if we assume, and we'll just leave the pick off the board because we just don't know who it's going to be, but Ace Bailey, age of 19, Isaiah Collier, 21, Kyle Filipowski, 22, Keontae George, 22, Jaren Jackson Jr., 26, Walker Kessler is 24, and we'll get to maybe some of the other pieces, but Lauri Markkanen at the age of 28, Bryce Sensabaugh remains on the roster, as does Cody Williams, and obviously Lauri Markkanen. And then attendant to that will be whoever they draft, and maybe they make another move or two. But again, hard to answer this without knowing exactly what the roster will look like next year. But what would you perceive to be a reasonable expectation now that the Jazz have taken this major swing next season?
Yeah, if they can do something like we're just talking about, something even in that realm, or maybe they can make another deal, because look, Seth, the whole reason they've done all this stuff they've done the last several years to get this treasure chest of draft picks and draft capital is to be able to pounce on opportunities when they come up. And you don't know if they're going to come up, and you don't know when they're going to come up. And being able to do this thing today is a big move in that direction. They still have a lot of draft capital. Just say hypothetically, somebody like a Kobe White in Chicago becomes available. We know John Morant is available. Okay, that's a lot of money for John Morant. There's a lot of the other issues with him involved, okay? But we know that he's a real guy as well when he's on the floor and when he's playing, and he affects NBA games. So now, if you get somebody else that's like that, to come into your mix, a lead ball handler, a lead guard, like those kind of guys, now the whole script flips, Spence, and now you're looking, in my opinion, you're looking at a team that if they were to stay healthy next year at this time, I would think they would, in the West, they could be a top 4 or 5 team. They could be a 50-plus win team. They could flip it around that quickly if everything else falls into place. The biggest thing, as we always talk about, of course, being the health of all those players. But if you have a consistent lineup night in and night out, and that's what you're starting with, that's a big deal. And that would give Jazz fans a lot of hope and a lot of excitement to be able to start rooting for some group that's actually trying to compete and win fairly quickly, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. I think this is a really positive step in the right direction. There's some things that probably have to be figured out a little bit as it pertains to, offensively. Will they be able to move the ball the way they have? Do they have enough shooting? Do they have enough offensive juice? But Will has proven to be very proficient, and on that side of the floor, and the defensive issues have been addressed by adding one of the best defensive players in the league. But let me ask you about, just real quick, Jock Landale in addition to John Conchar. And then, when I've watched Memphis, this Vince Williams Jr. kid is a really good on-ball defender. He had some health issues in college. He played at VCU, but he's been able to stick as a second-round pick for a couple of years because he really guards. Do you think any of the other 3 players will be around for the long haul, part of the plan for the future?
Yeah, it's that would be hard to say. Jock Landale, the Australian kid who played at St. Mary's, he's our group always liked him as a serviceable backup guy. He's a good worker. He's a good culture guy. I could see them holding on to someone like him, to be, back of the rotation type guy. Conchar, I don't know if they would hold on to him or not. The Vince Williams kid, you're right. He's shown that he can defend. And again, if the Jazz want to keep a guy like him, he's a low salary guy. Have him coming off the bench to get up into guys. Defensively, maybe they play that off with what Keontae George does on the offensive end, because he has problems guarding or wanting to guard or being able to guard, whatever that is. But maybe this kid comes in and can pick up some of that slack and rotations and certain times of games. I don't know. They may not keep him. I don't know. But he's a low salary guy. But so I would think that they'd at least take a look at him and see what they got the rest of the year, and then make a judgment on that in the summertime about how they're going to deal with that part of their roster during the summer.
All right, Smitty, before I say you lose, the most important question of the day is, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl and why?
The Super Bowl, all I keep hearing is Seattle, Seattle, Seattle. And so I don't know. I like Drake May. I like the way Sam Darnold has played this year. Both those guys, I think it's going to be like any Super Bowl, Spence. I think it's just going to come down to whoever can hold on to the ball, whoever doesn't turn it over. I think if a team has a couple of bad miscues, untimely interception, or a bad fumble in their own territory, it's probably going to decide the fate of the game. But I'm looking forward to this. I think it's exciting to have two teams like this. Kind of the people knew were could be competitive, but didn't know they would get this far, and so it gives a new light to it. And on a whim, I'm just going to go with New England 21-17. How about that?
Love it. All right, my friend. Thanks for hopping on with short notice. We'll see you on Thursday, okay?
Thanks, man. Sounds good. Thanks, man.
All right, the great Richard Smith loves the deal. 40 years with the Utah Jazz as a voice in the room, making deals such as this. If you're just hopping in your car and getting your commute home started, the Utah Jazz made a sizable transaction today, adding a two-time All-Star and a one-time Defensive Player of the Year at the age of 26. Jaren Jackson Jr. is your newest member of the Utah Jazz. We'll catch a break, but more on this NBA Daily Assist style coming up next. It's Zach Harper, and then stick around for the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Busy Tuesday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Big day today. Randomly, didn't think we were going to go in this direction, but we are lucky enough to have Zach Harper on the program as the Utah Jazz have made a massive, massive move. Jaren Jackson Jr., 2 All-Star appearances, 1 Defensive Player of the Year award at the age of 26, is the newest member of the Utah Jazz. Zach, happy Tuesday, man. How are you?
I'm excellent. How are you doing?
We're good. I like it. There are some things that I think need to pan out here. It's not a complete roster. My gut tells me there are other things that are in the works, and they maintain their pick this year. But 3 first-round picks go to Memphis: Walter Clayton Jr., Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, George Niang. The Kyle Anderson back in Memphis story isn't getting enough love, but whatever. John Conchar, Jock Landale, Vince Williams Jr., but of course the prize is Jaren Jackson Jr. What do you think?
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about the Jazz finally replacing the missing piece of an Aussie with Jock Landale.
Oh, we'll get there, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. It's a great move. I'm a big fan of it. I think, yes, they gave up a lot. Those 3 picks could be good picks, especially that Phoenix pick in 2031 might be pretty valuable. I like Clayton. I like the idea of Taylor Hendricks, if he could just stay on the court and get some consistency. Niang and Anderson are good veterans, but Jaren Jackson Jr. is a very dynamic defender. Like, he has his issues. He fouls too much, and he has some dumb fouls, and not a great rebounder, but he's a phenomenal defensive player. I think it gives the Jazz so many options of how they can build out that roster. Do they bring back Walker Kessler in the summer when he's a restricted free agent and have like a huge front line at times of Lowry and Triple J and Walker, and then even like Ace Bailey at shooting guard? Like, there's just so many different ways they can go with this move, and he fits perfectly next to Lauri Markkanen, and either as a 5 or 4 or whatever you want to do. I just think this is a great swing by a Jazz team that clearly was not happy with the whole tanking process.
Yeah, I've been really singing their praises today because, of course, for the past few years, I've been critical of the front office, who hasn't really drafted well, if we're honest, and has been hesitant to utilize the assets to do anything forward-facing and taking a step in the right direction. But look, they've utilized essentially the cap space that they were going to have next year. This is kind of like a free agent signing, okay? And if they bring back Walker Kessler and match whatever contract it gets, and I think that they will be capped out. So this is kind of the group. Now, they do maintain their draft asset this year, which I think is a really big deal. But if we just operate off the premise of what we have in front of us, Keontae George is 6'4", Ace Bailey is 6'9", Lowry is 7'1", Jaren Jackson Jr. is 6'10", and Walker Kessler is 7'2". It would be the tallest starting lineup in NBA history. If that's the group heading into next year, what's the good, what's the drawback?
I mean, I think the idea that you could have Kessler protecting the rim and then Jackson kind of like floating and basically playing free safety out there, I don't think you're going to see the worst defense in the league for a 4th straight year. Right? Like finally there will be some resistance on that end of the floor. Yeah. Now, you still need Keontae to be good. You still need Lowry to be good defensively. You need Ace Bailey to develop and even just be a guy who knows where to be and help. So there's still some issues there. But taking away the paint the way they'll be able to, and being pretty active and having those 2 guys on the floor with Jackson and Kessler, if that's the plan, like, it allows the perimeter defenders to be more aggressive. Right? You can create a little bit more chaos. Like, I just think it's a great foundation. Offensively, you can stretch the floor, you can go big, you can go small, you can attack the middle of the floor, you can maybe get to the free throw line a whole lot more. Like, I just think that it's a great base for where they want to go. Now, I don't know what where the potential of that group over like a 3-4 year period probably hinges on the development of Keontae, the further development of Keontae, and the development of Ace Bailey. But also, like, even though the Jazz have not done a great job of drafting the last couple of years with some of these very important draft picks, they do have a great history as an organization with player development. And so I do think you have to trust that, especially with the Angels involved and in charge. I do think you have to trust that that's going to be a point of emphasis.
But the question to me is there enough offensive creation? Is there enough ball in hand to be able to dribble, penetrate? I mean, Will Hardy's offensive system is really predicated on scoring off the pass. It's the one thing they do on an elite level. They're one of the best teams in assist rate in the NBA. But there are, according to what I have read earlier today, of the 40 players that have averaged 20-plus points per game, the two players in that group that average the least assists per game are Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr., literally the bottom two. Your point about Keontae certainly is well taken. His decision making has improved a little bit this year, but it's not elite. And Ace is 19. So if they march that 5-man unit out next year, will they be able to acclimate to Will's system, the free-flowing Greg Popovich, San Antonio Spur, Steve Kerr, Golden State Warrior system? Is there enough creativity and ball-in-hand skill set with that group to score the way you need to in the modern day of the NBA?
I think there is. I mean, I think a lot of that is going to be how good is Ace Bailey in year two, right? Like that's going to be a lot of it. Keontae obviously has massive responsibility here. I do think Jaren Jackson Jr., I know the stats aren't there, I do think he can be a lot more dangerous as a passer in the half court. He had a lot of games where it was him, Ja, Desmond Bane. Well, Ja and Desmond Bane are the playmakers there, right? I don't think they asked him to do a whole lot, but I think you can do a kind of, not to the same level as Sabonis with Sacramento, but I do think there's a lot of dribble handoff possibilities between Jackson and Bailey, Jackson and Keontae. Maybe even you go a little weird and do some stuff with him and Lowry that creates some problems. Like I do think there's more you can do there, but yes, the majority of this is going to be based on what does Keontae do, in terms of development in year 4, 5, 6 with his playmaking. Is Ace Bailey going to just be just a scorer, or does he have more of that to his game that they can unlock? And then a big part of that, too, will be, what does their bench look like, right? It's not just going to be a 5-man unit. They're going to need playmakers off the bench. But I do think there's more with Jackson, especially like on some of those short roll situations. I think if you have, shooters in the corners, I do think he can find those guys pretty regularly.
So you referenced the bench, and the hard part about analyzing this right now is we have zero clue what it's going to look like at the start of next season. I mean, my gut tells me this is the first move of maybe a few they have in mind. Can they get anything done prior to Thursday's deadline? I don't know, but of course we have the entire offseason, and as I referenced, they do keep their asset this year. So we can only kind of go off of what sort of idea that we have right in front of us currently with what they have on the roster. So we've already gone over the starting 5. And we'll go over what I'll just call like the next 5. It's probably going to be Isaiah Collier, Kyle Filipowski, John Conchar, Jock Landale. The kid, the Vince Williams Jr. kid is a pretty good on-ball defender. Of course, there's Bryce Sensabaugh. Cody Williams was not in the deal. My guess is because Memphis was like, yeah, we're good. Maybe Svi comes back. I mean, it's not necessarily a group of names that jump off the paper. And again, we'll see what they can do with the draft and maybe another move. But operating off what we have in front of us, which is all we can do, what does success look like, in your opinion, next year for this team?
Yeah, I like Vince a lot. Vince is a good playmaker. He's a good defender. He's an inconsistent shooter, and I think there's something there to develop. But I do like Vince. I think that's a very good part of that deal for them. I don't know about Conchar. Jock's a nice backup, but they're kind of set with big men. I'm sure Nurk is moving on at some point. I guess they're going to run with Filipowski. I'd probably rather Jock than Filipowski, but you can have both of them on the roster. I think the key is going to be, is Isaiah Collier actually good, right? His numbers are fine this year. It's about 10 points, 6 assists, 7 assists, something like that. I think he's making his shots that aren't three-pointers. The turnovers aren't bad, but there's a difference between doing this on a team that has zero expectations of competing and a team that now will have expectations of, no, you need to be better, and these mistakes can't be the young guy mistakes anymore. And so I think we're going to find out whether or not they actually believe in him as a backup point guard. I like the idea of Sensabaugh. I'd love it a lot more if he was shooting the ball like he did last year. Cody Williams, I don't know that I've ever been as wrong on a prospect as I was with Cody Williams.
Yeah.
Because I thought he was going to be someone who could really play and play almost right away, and he's just not there. Like this, and it's not like, you and I talked about this with Keontae his first 2 years of like, hey, things look good. The results just aren't that. Nothing looks good with Cody Williams. Yeah. Like I don't see it from time to time at any point, and so. Yeah, like I think there are some pieces here in that bench that you can think about, keeping long term and developing, but it's probably going to be how do we turn either some of these picks or some of these young guys into veterans that you trust a lot more off the bench if this team is going to be serious about winning, which this is a move that makes them serious about winning.
Yeah, it does, and I think a reasonable expectation next year should be not just play-in, but playoff and maybe top 5 or 6. Now, beyond that, I'm not going to get crazy. But it as I have the depth chart in front of me and I've updated it with all the new pieces and the contract numbers, it's not a complete team. It's a much better team today than it was yesterday. But they did hold on to their asset for this upcoming draft. So my guess, Zach, is Jaren Jackson Jr. is flying to Salt Lake to find out that he has a bum knee. Like, I don't think, they're, right? Like, we're not going to see this team go full bore right away, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be the plan, right? Like, Trae Young hasn't, I don't even know if he's been in the arena in Washington, D.C. with the Wizards. Like, that may be it because this is top 8 protected. But they've got a cushion, right? They've got about a 4.5 game cushion between Milwaukee and Dallas and a 5-game cushion with Memphis. But we know, like, Memphis is not going to win many more games this year. So, I expect that tanking to be pretty hard. You kind of need to finish in that top 4 to guarantee that you finish in that top 8. If you're Utah, I don't think they'll have a problem with that. I think they're going to be okay, even if Jaren Jackson Jr. plays. I don't know if Lowry's going to play, consistently. Like we've seen this team shut it down and put a bad product on the floor a few times the last couple of years. But yeah, like that is something where if you're going to hang on to this asset in a trade, you kind of need to prioritize making sure you keep this asset. And so I would expect that, maybe you get a couple of games out of Jaren Jackson Jr., maybe get a week or two, but I can't imagine they're going to mess around with that.
So let's revisit this because the hope around here, and look, if the Jazz luck into the number 1 overall pick with this trade, we're cooking with gas next year. It's like, okay, let's go. If that happens, Haberstroh hopped by this week and said he'd take Boozer at 1. He's the first person that I've heard say that. I think he also said Reed Shepherd. Anyway, we'll leave that off air because we love our guy Tom. Number 1 overall pick. The Jazz get it, Zach. Who should they take?
Oh, man, such a good question. I'd still go Debanza just for the potential of it. But if you believe that this Darren Peterson stuff is agent-driven rather than, like, he can't finish games, because there's a lot of rumblings in that game against BYU was, there are accounts from people sitting near the Kansas bench saying, like, his agent came or his people came over and, like, basically shut him down for that game, and then maybe that's happened a few times this year. If you believe that physical body holds up way more than what he's finishing there this season, he might be the best fit for what this team is going to need just from a scoring standpoint. But I'll take the potential of AJ. Like I mean, no longer would Boozer. I could see Boozer being a fit for what the Jazz want to do before this trade. Not now. Like that doesn't make any sense now.
Yeah, no chance that they get one. They'd look at Boozer. I mean, they hired Carlos Boozer as a scout a couple of years ago. That's not accidental. And AJ, of course, is playing his college ball here. I feel like it would be. I don't disagree with you about AJ. I mean, the problem is when we get into these debates, you're supposed to say one guy sucks and the other guy, like, they're both.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're.
Well, Cam Boozer's brother sucks. He's not very good.
That's fair.
Does that count?
No, that's fair. Yeah, no, that's fair. We can do that. Okay. But when it comes to AJ and Darren, I love both of them, and I've got a lot of relationships with the BYU athletic department. I mean, he is mature. He's a good kid. He works hard. He plays hard. But with the trade they just made, if Darren Peterson is this ball-in-hand generational decision-maker, wing scorer, two-way, like, it feels like Darren would fit in with this group a little bit better than AJ. That's just kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I just don't know, like, do you need another like ball dominant guy, right? And not that AJ is like some free flowing, let me get everybody involved player, but Darren Peterson like isn't much of a passer. He's a great shooter. He's a great scorer. He's not much of a passer. I'd probably buy the defensive stuff at the NBA level. But if I'm just going like, okay, I'm building this big team, right? And here's the thing, like, you don't know, like, the timeline stuff is great to have guys on the same timeline. I don't think it's imperative to do that. Lowry may be like a couple years and then they move on from him because of the second apron. Like these contracts, you can't just keep stacking these contracts, right? So the two big contracts with him and Jaren Jackson Jr., like, there may be a point where they need to move on from one of those guys. And then if you have Zabantha as like, all right, this 6'9", 6'10" wing, who's next to now 6'9" Ace Bailey and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler, or whatever that combination ends up being, like, it does give you a lot of options. Like, I don't know that they're going to click right away and be a playoff team next year. They'll be really good. But that, having those options and having that depth and having potential superstars throughout, those wing positions, that might end up being where you want to be in the NBA moving forward.
Not a conspiracy theory guy, but did you see Obama's birth certificate? No. So whatever, Zach. Let's it's going to get weird for a little bit here. And I don't know if there's, and it's relevant to this conversation because one of the assets that the Jazz gave up is the most favorable of Cleveland, Minnesota, and Utah in 2027. Now, Austin Ainge is very, very sharp, okay? And he's made a reputation for really being able to identify talent and draft well. The 2027 draft is, and you do this in a way that I don't, so I'll lean into your expertise, is not thought to be as good as this one or maybe the draft after that. So two of the picks they're giving up are in the 2027 draft. One's the Lakers pick, and when the Jazz acquired that Lakers pick, you're kind of going, okay, maybe LeBron would be done, but, now they have Luka, so they're going to be fine. Thank you, Nico Harrison. So that is, that'll probably be a 18 to 24 or whatever. But there are these reports out there that, surprise, 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 Donovan Mitchell might not want to stay in Cleveland. And there are some reports out there, right, that the Cleveland Cavaliers are exploring a Darius Garland for James Harden swap. So if they trade Garland and they get out from his contract, which has another 2 years, Harden's money is off the books. And if they move on from Mitchell because he's going to leave them, is there a chance that they are looking to kind of start over? And if so, is there a chance their 2027 pick might actually be good for Memphis in this scenario?
Yeah, there's a real chance. Like, I don't know a whole lot of people who feel confident that Donovan Mitchell is like long for that Cavs team. Like, this thing is kind of imploding. We saw them save a bunch of money with the DeAndre Hunter trade, and then if this happens, they'll be saving a lot of money. You can look at that and say, yeah, but they're opening up flexibility to rebuild the roster. Maybe they are, but also, like, Donovan Mitchell does not need to just be there, right? Like, he's not there because he wants to be there. He's there because he got traded, and then it made sense to, like, kind of stay there. And then this next decision on when that extension comes up, there's a reason they're kind of like resetting things to try to be flexible. It's to convince him to stay. So, like, I don't think at any point people around the league believe that Donovan Mitchell is long for this. Like, Brian Windhorst was talking about that on ESPN Cleveland earlier today, or maybe it was late yesterday. But, like, this is a very tricky situation for the Cavaliers. And that 2027 pick, maybe it won't be like top 5 or something like that, but it could definitely be a lottery pick. Like, that thing could implode pretty quickly. And it's honestly like they 2 years ago, most of us, myself included, was like, they need to break that team up. That, you got to choose between Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. You would obviously pick Mobley. You got to choose between Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. You would choose Mitchell. But then Kenny Atkinson came in. They had a great year last year, flamed out in the playoffs the same way. And the only reason, like, they brought everyone back this year is because they thought, oh, well, at least we'll be near the top of the East, and that, like, this team stinks. They've been a little bit better lately, but this is not a team where they're willing to keep this money and keep this investment. So I think they're going to be scrambling a little bit here.
Yeah, there was that clip going around of Tatum, who, of course, is hurt, was being interviewed. He's like, yeah, Cleveland, the city of Cleveland belongs to Donovan now. This is Donovan's city. And Donovan's kind of like, dude, shut up. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
What ultimately is, like, where will he end up where he decides to not do this to another city? Is it New York? Is that just what he's longing for?
I mean, maybe, right? Maybe it's Brooklyn. Maybe it's the Knicks. The Knicks seem less likely because you got Jalen Brunson there. I don't know why you would do that.
Right.
But maybe it's Brooklyn. Maybe he wants to be there. Or maybe, like, it might just be a place of his choosing this time, right? Maybe it's about being a place of his choosing. And you think about it, like, I'm not saying he's this, but look, we're on the verge of our fourth in-season trade of James Harden in the last 6 seasons. Right? Like, there might just be a point where he's like, yeah, I don't really want to work here, which is what James Harden's done. And then James Harden got to L.A. and was like, this is my home because it's where he's from. Like, I'm good. And now they don't want to give him money beyond next season. He's like, yep, get me out of here. I want to find a new spot. And Mitchell's not in that situation financially yet where teams won't commit long-term money to him. But there might be just a point where because he didn't choose Cleveland, he didn't choose Utah, right? Like, he didn't choose those two homes to start his career. He may just need to choose a spot and then find out, like, if that makes you happy to work there. I don't know. I don't know what the mentality is there.
You know what I was always told when he was here by people that were kind of in that kind of ecosystem around him, that the New York thing was a false narrative, that he actually wanted L.A. and so many of these guys do. But any insight there?
That I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know about that. Like, I'd always heard the New York stuff is kind of overblown, but that he did want a bigger market.
All right, before I set you loose, appreciate your time, busy day. You know, the one name that's out there that would move the needle in a pretty intense way continues to be Giannis. Any update on how this could play out?
Everything that's out there right now is basically like if they don't think that they can. If they don't think they can do better than what either Miami or Golden State is offering, then that will be the deal before Thursday's deadline. But 95% sure, like, this is going to the summer because that's when they can have bigger deals from other teams. And, you know, Minnesota made a deal of getting rid of Mike Conley today that put them under the first apron, and you can look at that as like, yeah, who cares? But there's this real feeling that, you know, Giannis really likes Ant and would like to play with him. Now, I don't know if that means that he will actually try to influence Milwaukee to send him to Minnesota. That still seems a little far-fetched to me, but it's enough of a thing where the Wolves are positioning themselves to take a shot at it, right? And so I still think ultimately Miami is the best deal on the table because of Hero, Khalil Ware, the draft picks, maybe another young player. The Warriors might be the most enticing thing for Giannis trying to get a championship in the next, like, year or two, but I don't know, like, I don't know that there is a front runner for the deals. Like, everything is going to open up this summer for them, and it, like, it's not like they're going to be short of suitors. So if anything, I just think June for a deal just helps their bottom line of restocking whatever they want to restock in Milwaukee. I don't know if that means Jaden McDaniels, Julius Randle, and a pick or two ends up swaying them. I don't think it's the Knicks unless Giannis just decides I'm only going to the Knicks.
Well, Zach, quite a day. You know, the Jazz haven't made a ton of massive deals in the history of the franchise. We could talk a little Spencer Haywood if you're into it, or Adrian Dantley, of course, Jeff Hornacek. This is, this is as big of a trade this team has made, man. So a lot of fun around here. Hey, we'll set you loose. Thanks for the time. Be good, okay?
Absolutely. Talk to you next week.
NBA Daily Assist style with our buddy Zach Harper. Usually we talk about the nightmare that it is being in your 40s and trying to date. But today, more important topics like the trade deadline. At Talk Hoops is where you find him. He writes the weekly power rankings for The Athletic on the NBA. Does a lot of draft stuff as well. So appreciate Zach's time on a Tuesday afternoon. We will catch a break, but more good stuff coming up. The voice himself, the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, is our guest on the other side right here on ESPN, 700. All right, stay tuned, kids. We say goodnight at 6 o'clock, and it's time for the Pro Bowl. Time for the Pro Bowl on the radio station. That's right. Watch Joe Flacco outduel Shedeur Sanders coming up at 6 o'clock tonight on the Pro Bowl. But our next guest, of course, you know it, with a little U2 in the background, the voice of the Utes, Bill O'Reilly. Bill, who did you put money on to win the Pro Bowl MVP?
Who are my options again?
Shedeur Sanders or Joe Flacco? I don't know.
I would probably lean Flacco just because he's done it before. I don't know. What is the format? Are they playing tackle? Is it a flag football game? That's how dialed into the Pro Bowl I am, Spence. I have no idea.
It's on the radio station tonight when we say goodnight. I think it's a flag football game, but I have no idea. When's the last time you actually watched 1 minute of a Pro Bowl?
Well, it was probably back when they were in Hawaii. Wasn't there that game when, like, Sean Taylor blew up a punter or something?
Oh, yes.
Like on a special teams play, somebody forgot to tell Sean Taylor it was an exhibition game for fun, and he ended the life of a punter, I think it was, in a Pro Bowl game.
No, that's right.
That was it.
That's right. Yeah, back in the day. Oh, Puka Nakua's there. Maybe Puka will be fun to watch. Anyway, nobody gives a rip about the Pro Bowl, so we'll move on, Riles. You know, since you and I last spoke, there has been some college football news to get into, and then we'll talk some college hoops, and I'll set you loose after that. We'll get your Super Bowl pick, of course, but
okay.
Devin Dampier and Bert Ficklin, it is official, I believe, since the last time you and I spoke. They're back in the fold. Big deal. Good news. What do you make of it?
Well, it's great news, because if you're talking about building around pieces and you're talking about college football, there's no better piece that you have to build around than an experienced, proven, really, really good quarterback, and that's what Devin Dampier is. And then to be able to get Bert Ficklin, who probably showed enough that there were people that were showing interest outside. He had a fantastic year coming out of nowhere. To get both those guys back is to me such a huge win for Morgan, and gives you so much to build around. Plus, you know who your leader is now. You don't have to go in search of a new offensive leader because you've got one. That kid was a leader from about the second week he stepped on campus this time last year. So I don't think you can put a real value on it, Spence. I think it's immeasurable to have an all-conference level quarterback back on your team. And I think there's a good chance this year with what's in the conference based on what he did last year, and if he can stay healthy, that Devin Dampier could absolutely be in the conversation as an all-conference quarterback.
So, of course, one of the real big benefits of the synergy last year was Devin knowing the system and Devin knowing the offensive coordinator. Well, that offensive coordinator lives in Ann Arbor now. You hear a lot of conversation about Kevin running a similar system to Jason. What sort of insight do you have there?
Well, I had Kevin on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, The Crimson Corner, which you can find everywhere you find podcasts, including the podcast of Spence Checketts' show.
Thank
Kevin
you, sir.
was great. I talked to him for about 25 minutes, and he was great. And he said, "Hey, I've always been a guy that adapted my offense to the strength of what it might happen to be." And he took a guy that we knew here at Utah that was a 1A quarterback, the guy we knew as the pig farmer, and basically turned him into an all Mountain West quarterback at Utah State last year, with a lot less talent around him, with a bad offensive line. Kevin McGivern made Bryson Barnes an all-league quarterback. So if he can do that with Bryson Barnes in a year, it was his first year in Logan last year, I like what he can do with the weaponry and obviously the quarterback skill set that he's got at Utah. So I think Kevin's going to do really good things. I think he's in a lot of ways, philosophy-wise, a lot like what Jason Beck was, playing the strengths. He's going to run the football. He's going to have a good running back and good running backs, and I think that what McGivern will do with Devin Dampier will be great. I'm looking forward to seeing it because the conversation I had with him was fantastic.
I am now, I don't know why I was not before, I am now officially a subscriber of the Crimson Corner with Bill Riley. Let me leave a quick 1-star review, and then we'll continue. Just kidding. Maybe I lost the text in my thread. Why have I not been invited to be a guest on the Crimson Corner yet?
Oh, that day's coming.
Okay.
I mean, that day is coming. We'll talk about the days of you roaming the campus at the University of Utah, your days at the Sigma Chi house in Ha, all that good stuff.
I think we'll stay away from those days. But I've got the pod up. Josh Grant, your last guest. Love me a little Josh Grant. We got a little Eric Weddle. So search Crimson Corner with Bill Riley. I just searched it on Apple Pods and subscribe. One more
excited, by the way, one more quick plug.
Yeah, go ahead.
Later this week, Joe DeRazio, the new general manager of Utah football, who's joined Morgan Scalley's staff, will be joining us, and we'll kind of get Joe's insight on working with Utah football, what a general manager does, what he hopes to do. So that pod will probably drop on Thursday or Friday morning.
Awesome. I'm glad you brought that up because I wasn't going to, but I will ask you now. It feels just like a, with all due respect, I'm not knocking on anybody. It just feels like a step in a more like grown-up professional direction for a role that is becoming more and more vital for college football.
You have to have it, Spence.
Yeah.
You absolutely, positively, in today's day and age, especially on the football and men's basketball side, you have to have somebody. And what I'm looking forward to talking to Joe. I only know what I've read and what I've been told from other people, but if you look at what you kind of need in a general manager, you need somebody who's got a bit of a business background because there's a financial component to it. You went to the Wharton School of Business. Okay, not bad. You want somebody who knows the sport. Well, Joe DeRazio was an all-Ivy League football player. And you want somebody that's in tune to today that can use the numbers. Well, he's an analytics guy, too. So he kind of checks all three of those boxes, and he's been some places. He coached in the NFL with the Chiefs and the Eagles. He coached at USC last year. Before that, he was on the staff at Baylor. So he's been some places, too. So I think, to your point, it's the right step. It's the right direction for Utah football to go. And he's a guy that's not going to be just the numbers guy who doesn't have a feel for football. He's not going to be the guy that's just the football guy that doesn't really know business or analytics. Checks all the boxes, and Morgan handpicked him. So I think it's going to work really well there.
So I wanted to ask you real quick because I've had a ton of questions about the transfer portal stuff. And, when you look at some of the rankings, on 3 and such, Utah's not ranked very high. Morgan is following a model that, of course, was put in place far before him of going after some players from smaller schools and then offering them an opportunity to kind of level up. And that is a model that's proven to be very successful. I believe there are 18 new transfers, so I'm not going to you tell me what you know, and if you want to pick one or two, go ahead. But Utah football transfer portal additions.
Yeah, there's different ways you can approach this. You can go after those high-end D1 guys that are in the portal that maybe had lesser production at a bigger school, or maybe they had big production at a bigger school. Or you can go the route of going the guys that were maybe group of 5 guys that had high-level production. And, again, everybody's going to come with different price tags, different positions, different situations. But as you mentioned, the approach that it appears that Morgan and his staff took this offseason was going after a bunch of group of 5 guys that had high-level production. And I'll just name 2 of those guys because they play pretty prominent positions. They're the wide receivers, Braden Pagan and Kylie Scholes. 2 wide receiver spots. Utah needed production. They need guys that can make plays on the outside. Well, Braden Pagan was a UCLA guy. Then he went to Utah State and blew up last year, ironically enough, under Kevin McGivern. Huge year. Was a highly sought-after target in the portal. Utah lands him. Kylie Scholes, another guy Kevin McGivern was familiar with. He helped recruit him to San Jose State. Again, Mountain West Conference, group of 5 school, but Kylie Scholes last year, McGivern was gone, had a huge year, 800 yards receiving, 6-7 touchdowns in a good offense. So instead of kind of patrolling some of those Power 4 schools where guys, or maybe 5-star guys coming out of high school and maybe had good but not great production, they went the way of, I want to see production from these guys. And these guys produced at a high level, and you see a lot of schools going that way. I'm going to go to that one step down from where I'm at and get guys that produce that we can project onto our level. They went some other places, too. They filled some gaps on the defensive line. They filled some gaps on the offensive line. But they did it in a lot of cases, and I think there were 15 or 16 new portal ads, at least my last check. And a lot of those guys were a group of 4 guys that had high-level production at a Mountain West Conference or a Sun Belt type level that they projected up.
Last football question, then I'll get a college basketball thought, then we'll set you loose because I know you got to go. Since you and I last spoke, the schedules have been released. If you're a Texas Tech fan, book your hotel in Arlington. I mean, my gosh. Like, they avoid Utah, they avoid BYU. Their road games are Oregon State, Colorado, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. Like, they're going in. Of course, on the Utah side of things, the storyline continues to be this rivalry game with BYU, and the November 7th slate goes up against 5 massive games. And look, if they played the last day of the season, it would be going up against, massive games as well. But this might be a virtual play-in for the Big 12 championship game, because I feel like Utah and BYU have proven to be the only teams they can at least throw punches with Tech. But what were your main takeaways, Bill?
Yeah, I think the schedule early is really good for Utah. 3 straight games at home in the non-conference. Arkansas looks good. I'm not sure what the Razorbacks are going to have this year. They were a 0-8 in the SEC and 2-10 team. They fired their coach mid-season. It'll probably be a little bit of a rebuilding year in Fayetteville, but your first 3 there, and you'll test yourself at Ames. I think the early part is good, but then you hit October 24th, and then that's when it becomes tough. Houston's good. Second-year coach Willie Fritz, they went 10-2 last year. They're good. Now, are they BYU, Utah, Texas Tech good? I don't know, but they made a huge jump from year 1 to year 2. You got them at home. Then Cincinnati. My inkling is Cincinnati might take a little bit of a step back this year. Then you're home with BYU. To me, though, the toughest game on the schedule, Spence, not named BYU for Utah, is that Arizona game. November the 14th. It's in Tucson. They were good last year, surprisingly good. And again, it's the week after you play BYU. That's a physical game. That's an emotional game. Then you got to go on the road and play a good Arizona team. Then you got to go on the road the next week and play what will probably be a good TCU team. So that stretch really from October 24th to November 21st, it's tough. It's tough for Utah. The really tough game is BYU, but that sneaky tough game is going to be that Arizona game for me.
Tough for Utah right now on the men's basketball side of things, as we predicted it would be all year. The Big 12, I think, top to bottom, is the best conference in the country. The top of the Big 10 is very tough, and the SEC is very good. But ultimately, it's going to be tough to find success in conference. And if you were going to find success in conference, you probably should do it at home against a team that isn't top shelf. They had an opportunity against Oklahoma State. And ultimately, down the stretch, it got loose. They'll have Arizona State coming up. But you're there every game calling these games. Are you seeing positive things that maybe listeners don't necessarily see themselves?
Yeah, it's interesting. You'll see something positive one game, and then maybe it goes away. You're not seeing enough consistent positivity, and I think Alex would tell you that as well. He was a little frustrated after that last game because I think he felt like that Oklahoma State game, had they done some of the things he was looking for them to do, would have been one that you win. And again, to your point, Spence, you know, Oklahoma State, Arizona State, those are teams that are in kind of your realm in the Big 12. And when you're at home, you want to protect your home floor. So that Oklahoma State loss Saturday stung a little bit. They've got a chance to make it right tomorrow night. They play Arizona State. Bobby Hurley's team has lost 5 of their last 6. They're 11 and 11. Odom's pretty good. They've got a freshman shot blocker, but this is not a Texas Tech or a Kansas or a Houston or an Arizona. This is a team that Utah at home can match up with and should be able to beat tomorrow night. So we'll see what happens. It's the 7 o'clock game. Mooney and I will have to call tomorrow night here on the ESPN 700. But it's one of those games where if you're going to maybe try to turn your season a little bit and get a little positivity in the second half of the conference season, I think it kind of begins maybe tomorrow night against ASU.
Can you articulate what it's like watching a game at Fog Allen? That Kansas BYU scene was wild.
It's pretty incredible. We're going to go there Saturday. I haven't been back to call a game since I was in college. Went to a couple of games after. I haven't been back in there for a game in probably 15 or 16 years. But the atmosphere, and I didn't see it because it was going head-to-head, but I went back and watched some clips of it the other night. It's pretty incredible. The building itself is old. It's 70 years old. It's got a museum of college basketball, basically the history of the program attached to it. They've sold out 397 straight games. I was just texting my nephew today. my brother's son. I said, Joe, am I going to see? He goes, well, I'm waiting to see if I get a ticket. They have a lottery every game for tickets.
Wow.
You have to put your name in for a lottery as a student just to get a ticket, but he thinks his name's going to get called. It's pretty special. And then, you also, buildings don't beat you, but good teams do. And I think Bill Self's winning percentage in that building is 95% in 23 years. So it's a pretty special place. But that game was crazy. And the fact that Darren Peterson didn't play in the second half kind of helped BYU come back in that thing. Did you see Peterson last night against Texas Tech?
Yeah. I mean, I just wish he would play. I want to watch him play basketball. He's awesome.
I mean, he's hurt. He's got cramps. He plays. I was talking to somebody today that knows the NBA really, really well, and he said he just makes it look easy. And he just, without even flinching, knocked back-to-back threes down and beat Texas Tech in Lubbock last night.
Yeah, he's a hell of a talent. I know you got to run, but Seattle, New England, Super Bowl 60. What's the Bill Riley pick?
I think I've got Seattle, Spence. Their defense is really, really good. They've got a lot of weapons. Unless Sam Darnold just completely melts down, I kind of like them. I like New England. I think Vrabel's done a really good job with that team, but I think it might be Seattle's year. What about you?
Yeah, look, anybody with the Patriots. I'm not ready for another generation of good Patriot football, but I love the Darnold story. I think it's close. The 4.5-point line feels about right. I'll take Seattle in a close one.
Real quick, because I haven't had any time today this afternoon. I saw the Jazz made the trade. What's the plan there? I thought they were trying to be bad to keep their draft pick. I mean, I like Jaren Jackson as a player, but now you're going to be better, but you're not going to be really good, so you're going to be kind of in that no man's land again, right? Or am I missing something?
Well, I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is about to fly to Salt Lake and learn that he has a bad back. I don't think we're going to see it. They held on to the pick this year, which means they're going to play their way to keep the pick. And, essentially they used the cap space they would have had next offseason to make this deal. This is their free agent signing, because if they re-sign Walker, they're capped out. And they weren't going to be able to sign a player that is good as Jaren Jackson Jr. is. So it's an incomplete roster. I feel like there are more moves on the way, but this is them finally doing something bold, Bill, which I've been yelling about for like 4 years. So.
Well, if that's the case, then that makes complete sense, because they control him, for 3 years?
3 years, maybe 4, but he does have a player option in the 4th year. So we'll see. They need more ball-in-hand decision makers. If they get 1 or 2, maybe they get Darren, and then maybe we've got something to talk about next year,
Yep, gotcha. Hey, Spence, thanks.
Riles, thanks, man. Voice the Utes, Bill Riley. Check out the Crimson Corner. I thought I was subscribed. I wasn't, but I am now. The latest episode is with Josh Grant, who came on this show last year and had some things to say. If I remember correctly, Josh Grant had some things to say that got some folks talking around town. Am I recalling this correct? I'm aging, Porter, but I believe I'm recalling that correctly, yeah?
Josh was not stoked with the state of the program before old Alex came through. Now, we'll give him some time. Maybe we'll get Josh on again soon.
Oh, I want Josh on every day. That dude is radio gold. He's like the basketball Trevor Riley, but a little bit more measured than our guy Trev.
Fair enough.
Who's been, no. Kevin McGivern joined Bill's podcast. He had Eric Weddle on, Kevin White, little Utah State stuff. Talk about Kevin McGivern's hire, Stuart Mandel. Kyle Bonagura stopped by as well. So the Crimson Corner with Bill Riley, for all of you Utah Athletic fans, go check it out. All right, Black Crows. Love me a little Black Crows, and Whiskey Myers are taking over the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater on August the 13th. Tune in to OC's show at noon for your chance to win a pair of tickets. More details can be found at ESPN700sports.com. All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. We're going to reset the big news of the day today in case you missed it. If you're hopping in your car and turning on your radio, the Utah Jazz made a bold acquisition today. Traded 3 first-round picks, a bevy of young players, and matching salaries to the Memphis Grizzlies for a package that includes a 26-year-old who's been an All-Star twice and a Defensive Player of the Year once. Jaren Jackson Jr. is on his way to Salt Lake. We'll talk about it and then get to Super Bowl 60, 5 days away. Busy 5 o'clock hour. Then we say goodnight at 6 in time for the Pro Bowl. You're welcome. Keep it here on ESPN 700. Drive at 5 time, Tuesday afternoon style. What's going on? 1 hour left in the show. We'll say goodnight at 6 o'clock, and then you will listen to the Pro Bowl on this radio station. You're welcome. Little gift from us to you. Happy Tuesday to you. We are 5 days away from Super Bowl 60, the final football game of the year. Of course, you can hear that game on our radio station. The Seattle Seahawks are a 4.5-point favorite over the New England Patriots. Pre-game coverage a couple hours prior to kick, and kick is listed at 4:30 Mountain Time, but you never know with the pregame festivities. Be around that time for the final football game of the year. So stay tuned. We'll kind of get you ready for that game. Now, big news of the day today. If you are just hopping in your car and starting your commute home, first of all, hello, how are you? Drive safe out there. Thanks for making us a part of your day today. And Austin Ainge and Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck have taken a very, very big swing today with the acquisition of Jaren Jackson Jr. from the Memphis Grizzlies. So let's get to some of the specifics. We'll kind of go over this, brick by brick so you understand exactly what happened here. So the NBA trade deadline is on Thursday. Some other moves were made today that we'll get to, but about 12 o'clock, 12:30, just afternoon, the news broke that the Utah Jazz have traded Kyle Anderson, Walter Clayton Jr., Taylor Hendricks, George Niang, and 3 future first-round picks in exchange for Jaren Jackson Jr., John Conchar, Jock Landale, and Vince Williams Jr. So as you dig into this, the picks that Utah is sending to Memphis, it is the Los Angeles Lakers 2027 pick. So it's the Lakers pick next year. It is the most favorable of Utah, Cleveland, and Minnesota for next year's draft as well. The final one is actually a sneaky valuable asset, at least it could be. It is an unprotected pick in 2031 that belongs to the Phoenix Suns. So those are the 3 picks. Now, the big portion of the takeaway with the draft capital is the Jazz retain their own pick this year. My guess is Memphis asked for it. Jazz, of course, value that pick. So what does that mean? A lot of people are concerned about whether or not, because Jaren Jackson Jr. is a very good player. We'll get to this. 26 years old, 2 All-Star games, Defensive Player of the Year, can guard basically all 5 positions. He's one of the few players in the NBA that can guard the rim and on the perimeter, can switch 1 through 5. Doesn't rebound it well, which I think surprises a lot of people. He's a career like 5.5 per game rebounder. He's averaging about 5.5, 6 boards per game. So you would think a player that's 6'10", who's won Defensive Player of the Year and protects the rim, gets rebounds. He actually doesn't. He's not really a ball mover either, doesn't pass it all that well. One of the stats that's floating around is that of the 40 players that have averaged 20 points per game, Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. averaged the least assists per game in that group. So that's going to be a little bit of a challenge. But at 26 years old, the ability to go get a player like Jaren Jackson Jr. is a massive, massive coup for this front office, in my opinion. Now, only time will tell. It is an incomplete roster. There's still some additions that I think might even be made prior to Thursday's deadline. And if not, prior to the start of next season. Of course, we still have the draft, and we still have all of off-season next year for the Jazz to add pieces to the mix. But a lot of people are wondering whether or not this ends the Walker Kessler experience in Utah, whether or not the Jazz would try to move on from him, trade him, or next offseason, as he's a restricted free agent, do you make a decision in that direction? Walker Kessler is actually the type of center that fits in really well next to Jaren Jackson Jr. It's why the Grizzlies drafted the Zach Edey kid out of Purdue, the big kid who was College Basketball Player of the Year. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. Now, Jaren Jackson Jr.'s numbers this year have dipped a little bit, but Memphis is not a good team. They traded Desmond Bane a year ago. Ja Morant is an unserious person, and they've had a bunch of injuries. So he's been asked to do a little bit more. His usage numbers are a little bit higher, but his efficiency numbers have been a little bit lower. But I wouldn't really read too much into that. That's more about his playmates in the sandbox than who he is as a player. But I really believe the Jazz made this acquisition for a couple of different reasons. And number one, I think the growth of Keontae George allowed the Jazz to believe that they're not that far off from being at least competitive night in and night out in the Western Conference. Do I think the Jazz are going to win 60 games and win the championship next year? No, I don't. But you put Jaren Jackson Jr. next to Walker Kessler, you put Lauri Markkanen at the 3, and then I believe they've done their calculation that Ace Bailey is going to be their shooting guard. And I'm using these old school basketball labels that a lot of basketball people don't even use anymore. And if you start Keontae alongside those four, you go 6'4", 6'9", 7'1", 6'10", 7'2". It would be the tallest starting lineup in the history of the NBA. And for the Jazz, for 4 straight years now, they have been the worst defensive team in basketball. And honestly, it really hasn't even been close. They've been historically bad on the defensive side of the basketball floor. You really add one of the top, 3 to 5 defensive players in the entire NBA, and suddenly you have addressed a need, okay? The other thing to keep in mind here is the Jazz essentially used the used the cap space that they were going to have next season to make this transaction. You almost view this as the free agent signing the Jazz would have tried to make next offseason. The good thing about that is, A, you don't have to convince anybody to come here, which in the past has been problematic. Look up Ronnie Cycli kids or Derek Harper. And B, when you look at the free agency class, if Jaren Jackson Jr. was a free agent, he might be the best player available next offseason, which is one of the reasons why this makes absolute sense. If they re-sign Walker Kessler, which I believe they are going to do, that is their cap space. That essentially is used. About 95% of your cap space is gone. You bring back Walker, you start Jaren Jackson Jr., put him next to Lauri Markkanen, and then it's Ace Bailey, then it's Keontae George. But, of course, the question a lot of people have is this draft pick coming up. Is the addition of Jaren Jackson Jr., first of all, it makes you better right away, and the Jazz don't have a lot of wiggle room when it comes to maintaining this asset. So my guess is Jaren Jackson Jr. is about to fly to Salt Lake and learn that he suddenly has a knee issue. I don't think you're going to see this team put its best foot forward to play its best lineup night in and night out. They've already been manipulating lineups in the name of draft capital. I know they said they would not do that, but they are clearly doing that, and they have been doing that, and guess what? You have to do it. But I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't exist in the space of worrying about whether or not this makes the Jazz too good right now. I don't think they care. I don't think it's a situation where they have made this trade to try to do anything significant this season, because that makes literally zero sense. You know, really, what's the point of earning a play-in spot this year? It makes no sense. You're not close to Oklahoma City. You're not close to San Antonio, Denver, Houston, Minnesota, the Lakers. I could keep going. The Jazz have won 15 games right now. Okay, so as we sit here today, the Jazz would draft 6. If they stay at 6, that's about a 96% chance of holding onto that pick. And my guess is they're going to try to keep losing to get into the top 4. In fact, tonight's kind of a big game. You got to lose it. You're playing Indiana, who's only won 13 games. Jazz are playing right now. But this is potentially, I mean, when you look at Jazz history, Spencer Haywood, Adrian Dantley, Jeff Hornacek, Darren Williams. Darren was a trade. The Jazz traded up to get him on draft night. The Darren Williams trade. The Rudy Gobert trade. The Donovan Mitchell transaction. February 3rd, in the year of our Lord 2026, could be a day we look back on in a few years as a very seismic day in the history of this organization. You could make an argument that this is the biggest front-facing addition trade in the history of this team. That's who Jaren Jackson Jr. could be at the age of 26 for the next 6-7 years if he wants to stay here. Now, he's under contract for 4 years. The final year of his contract is a player option, so that is up to him as to whether or not he decides to exercise that and stay here. And, of course, that is the challenge that the Utah Jazz have run into in years past. But a big-time swing for the fences move by Austin Ainge today, as the Utah Jazz sent 3 first-round draft picks, along with some interesting young players, namely Walter Clayton Jr. and Taylor Hendricks, in addition to Kyle Anderson and George Niang. Kyle and George essentially are salary fillers. Now, the other pieces in this deal, Jock Landale, John Conchar, and Vince Williams Jr., if I had to guess, I think Vince Williams Jr. will probably be the only other player that will be here for the long haul. You know, John Conchar is a guy that can shoot a little bit. Jock Landale is a pretty decent backup big, but you don't really need another one of those. So as far as what the team is going to look like the rest of the way, I think you're going to see a lot of Cody Williams minutes. I think you're going to see a lot of Kyle Filipowski minutes. I think you're going to see a lot of Isaiah Collier minutes. And I think you're going to see a team that continues to be unserious about competing this year. But what this signals is, to me, it's time to go all in next season. And you hang on to the asset this year, and if for the first time in Utah Jazz history, lottery luck shines on them, and they're able to add a Darren Peterson or an A.J. DeBonsa to this core, we're cooking with gas. This is a good day if you are a Jazz fan. This team is much better right now and positioned in a much better spot moving forward to finally get back in the mix, so we don't have to watch every single night wondering if they're actually going to try, if they're going to play their players. You get the draft pick. Maybe you make another couple of additions. It is an incomplete roster as of now. I think, if your lineup is Keontae George, Ace Bailey, Lowry Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Walker Kessler, do you have enough ball in hand, creative offensive players to beat their man off the dribble, make the defense collapse, make good decisions, good passers, good decision makers? Like, that to me is the question. But if you can add an A.J. DeBonsa or a Darren Peterson, the question will be answered. So big day in the ecosystem of Utah Jazz basketball. We'll break it down coming up and get a little Super Bowl action. All right, final segment of the program today. Busy day today. Woof. A lot busier than I was expecting to be. Of course, the Utah Jazz making a sizable move, acquiring Jaren Jackson Jr. from the Memphis Grizzlies in exchange for 3 first-round draft picks and some young pieces, Walter Clayton Jr., Taylor Hendricks, and some salary fillers in Kyle Anderson and George Niang. The Bulls traded Nikola Vucevic to the Celtics for Anthony Simons. So the Chicago needed a big. We've talked about it. They get that done. Dennis Lindsey back at it today. The Pistons get Kevin Huerter in a trade with the Bulls and the Timberwolves. Dario Saric will also go to Detroit. Mike Conley is headed to Chicago, as is Jaden Ivey. The word is Minnesota is trying to position themselves to maybe make a run at Giannis. The word is out there that the Warriors are open to potentially trading Draymond Green, and a lot of rumors about James Harden for the fourth time in 6 years being traded, and the Cleveland Cavaliers apparently are interested there, and they would move on from Darius Garland, which would indicate they think Donovan is leaving because Garland's contract off the books, Harden's money's off the books at the end of this year. Then next year, you probably trade Mitchell and you start over. Now, that is important because one of the pieces in this deal is a 2027 unprotected pick, and it's the most favorable of Utah, Cleveland, and Minnesota. And if Cleveland is in a spot where they're trying to rebuild, we talked about this with Zach Harper a little bit earlier, that pick could be pretty good. All right, Porter, it's the annual releasing of the Celebrity All-Star Game rosters for All-Star Weekend. And every time I see, so for our listeners, I'm sure you don't care, nor should you. During NBA All-Star Weekend, they have an NBA All-Star Celebrity Game. It's entirely unwatchable. None of them can play outside of the former athletes. So let's start with, let's see. Giannis is coaching one team. Well, the Antetokounmpo brothers are coaching one team. Then Anthony Anderson is coaching the other. Here is Team Giannis. Keegan-Michael Key is from Key and Bradley, right? I know who that is.
Yeah.
Rome Flynn. Any idea?
No clue.
Dylan Wang.
No.
Shams. We know Shams.
Right.
Jenna Bandy.
Can't help you on that one.
Rick Schnall.
What?
Who are these people? Taco Fall. He's a former NBA player, right?
Yes.
Jeremy Lin. Lin Sanity.
There we go.
Someone named Glorilla.
Glorilla.
Someone named Cafu. Amon-Ra St. Brown, we know. So that is Team Antetokounmpo. Over to Team Anthony Anderson. Simu Liu? Anything?
No.
Cody Jones?
I mean, outside of that being like a very common name, I don't know who the celebrity one is.
Badshaw?
What?
Andre DeGrasse? Is he related to Neil deGrasse Tyson? Taylor Frankie Paul. Matt Ishbia owns the Suns. Jason Williams, White Chocolate. He'll probably get MVP. Nicholas Vantensberg. Any idea?
No.
There's a player who will wear number 10 whose name is Mustard. Do you know who Mustard is?
I don't. Now, I am the wrong guy to ask.
Adrian Nunez.
Not sure.
And then Keenan Allen. So we know who that is.
Yeah, all the non-sports people outside of Keegan-Michael Key, I have no clue. He's the only non-sports celebrity I recognize.
I think I'm with you. I think he's the only name. Oh, my gosh. They're probably like YouTube streamers, right?
I think that's kind of it's gone towards more like influencers and YouTube, which is genuinely a different world from the one that I live in. Yeah. So I'm not the guy to ask when it comes to the celebrity game, but I remember when it used to be like Terrell Owens and like really popular hip-hop artists and the Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, remember? Actually a really good hooper. I don't know, dude. If you're going to have a celebrity game, get some celebrities.
Yeah, I mean, it's the name of the game. So it would indicate that we're tuning in to watch famous people.
Hot take?
Yeah, famous people play basketball.
Hot take.
What's the hot take?
Kevin Hart killed the Celebrity All-Star Game by, making it the Kevin Hart garbage show for 5 years in a row or more.
I feel like that's anything he's in. I know I'm on an island. I don't find that guy funny at all. I just think he's annoying.
He's funny in, very small doses. But again, they made the NBA All-Star Game the Kevin Hart spectacle for 8 years, and I'm not going to get on a soapbox about the NBA All-Star Game. I'm sorry. But I think people got a little sick of that, and now they're having to go to, the YouTube comments to get people to come play.
There are two modern-day funny people that I'll just speak for Gen Xers. Kevin Hart and Pete Davidson, I've never ever found anything funny about either of them. And
That's
I
fair.
feel like young people love them. It makes me feel old.
I think Kevin Hart can be like a funny character in like a scripted movie, but yeah, I'm kind of with you.
All right, Jazz are playing the Pacers tonight, 2 unserious teams. College basketball locally will come back tomorrow with the Utah men hosting Arizona State, the Utah women on the road against UCF, and BYU on the road against Oklahoma State. Utah State's at the Pit tomorrow. That's actually a big game. Those two teams are tied for first in the Mountain West Conference. All right, busy day. I want to remind you can catch me on TV tonight at 10:35 on KMYU. With my guy Dave Fox, we're going to be breaking down the big trade in Jazzland today, so stay tuned for that. Porter, what comes our way on a Wednesday edition of this show?
Halfway through the work week, it's going to be a big deadline day edition of, deadline day eve, I should say, edition of The Drive. Andy Larson on the Jazz and more, Tony Jones around the league, and some Jazz trade thoughts as well. And then a guy who is literally more of a celebrity than any of the people we just mentioned, Tim McMahon of the NBA Daily Assist.
There you go. That'll be an awesome guest list on a Wednesday afternoon. We will say goodnight and a special thank you to Chase Hansen, Freddie Coleman, Richard Smith, Zach Harper, and Bill Riley. A lot of really good stuff there. College football, NFL, and, of course, reaction to the trade today. If you missed any of the sound, you can go to the website, which is ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. That ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And then finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, we have a podcast. So good news, it's up online for your consumption at any time. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars. For Porter and Duke, our station mascot, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Tuesday evening. Pro Bowl coming up on the other side right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN.